Chapter 2036. There was no day in the 50th floor of the underground city, so naturally, there was no sunlight. However, when the morning gradually came, in the camp of Loki's clan, the members who had rested for the night came out of their tents one after another and changed shifts with the members who had been on duty for the night. It was the beginning of a new day. Noah also followed his biological clock and woke up at this time. However, just as he woke up, Noah felt it. In his arms, there were two soft bodies. That was Noah's first thought as he felt the soft and delicate body in his arms. Is it those clingy girls again? Except for Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith, Noah couldn't think of any girls who would crawl into his arms and sleep with him for the whole night. However, when Noah thought about it, he suddenly felt something was wrong. Clothes. The two bodies in Noah's arms were not as naked as usual, which made Noah's hands full of the feeling of smooth skin, but the texture of clothes. If it was Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith, they shouldn't wear clothes when sleeping with him. And what's with this fragrance? As the master who was stuck to by Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith almost every morning, Noah was already familiar with the smell of Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith. However, at this moment, the fragrance emanating from the two delicate bodies in his arms was completely different from that of Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith. The two abnormalities made Noah realize a somewhat terrifying fact. The two girls in his arms were probably not Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith. Noah immediately opened his eyes. In the next second, Noah finally saw the two bodies in his arms. On the left was a girl with waist-length light blonde hair and delicate appearance like a doll. On the right was a very pretty and cute elf with leaf-like sharp ears. At this moment, the two girls were nestled in Noah's arms. Although they didn't hug Noah tightly like Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith, they still clung to him and slept peacefully on Noah's chest. Other than Aster and Leafia, who else could it be? Noah's brain immediately crashed. Why? Why are these two girls here? After his brain crashed for a while, Noah finally realized what was going on. This was not his tent. Now that you mention it. Noah seemed to recall something. Last night, I seemed to have fallen asleep here. Last night, Noah mentioned his past. In the end, not only did Noah tell a lot about himself, but even Aster and the others listened with great interest. They completely forgot that they needed sufficient rest before they could march into the unreached area the next day. Under such circumstances, this group of people should have unknowingly fallen asleep in Leafia's tent. The reason why Aster and Leafia snuggled into Noah's arms was probably because they were dizzy from sleeping. With this in mind, Noah raised his head and looked around. He saw that at the side, Tiona and Tiona were also snuggling together and sleeping soundly as if they were having a beautiful dream. As for the three leaders, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, they had already woken up and were huddled together, discussing something softly. Finn was the first to notice that Noah had woken up. He turned his head and looked at Noah, who was hugging on both sides with a smile. Are you awake? Did you have a good dream? After Finn spoke, Riveria and Gareth noticed that Noah had woken up, and smiled as well. Of course I had a good dream. Gareth grinned. After all, you fell asleep in such a state. If Loki knew about it, he would definitely be envious. Are you guys deliberately making fun of me? Noah squeezed out some words with difficulty. Don't tell me this is also something you guys did. Do you mean that we moved Aster and Leafia into your arms? Finn shrugged. You misunderstood. We wouldn't do such a thing. It was those two little girls who suddenly snuggled into your arms in the middle of the night, Gareth said teasingly. To be honest, I was shocked that Aster and Leafia snuggled into a man's arms unknowingly. This also proves that Aster and Leafia have a deep trust in you, Riveria said with a sigh. I've never seen Aster and Leafia so unguarded towards a member of the opposite sex. You are indeed special. Aster was not good at expressing her emotions, so she naturally would not be overly intimate with a member of the opposite sex. As for Leafia, as an elf, it was even more unimaginable that she would be so unguarded towards a member of the opposite sex. After all, elves were known for having an instinctive obsession with cleanliness, and would not be touched by someone whom they did not approve of. Although Leafia had left the elven village at a young age and grew up in the city, she was not like the other native elves who had an abnormal obsession with cleanliness. However, she was not a girl who would casually let a strange man hug her. It could be seen that Noah already had an extraordinary position in Aster and Leafia's hearts. Aster had an ignorant longing for Noah. Leafia, on the other hand, had acknowledged Noah out of instinct as an elf. Because of this, the two girls had unknowingly burrowed themselves into Noah's arms, allowing Noah to enjoy the feeling of having two beauties in his arms. It was a pity that Noah already had two charming wives and sisters at home. Usually, he was also accompanied by three expressionless but extremely cute and pretty little girls who were naked. Naturally, he would not be shaken by this level. I don't know if it's special or not. I only know that I was almost scared to death, Noah said in annoyance, and then gently got up. Fortunately, Aster and Leafia only burrowed themselves into Noah's arms, and did not cling on to Noah like octopuses like Aster, Orpheus, and Lilith. Otherwise, Noah would have a hard time breaking free. Finn smiled helplessly as he watched Noah gently peel the two girls off him. "All right, you don't have to be so careful. It's time to wake these girls up." In other words, the most crucial part of the expedition was about to begin. When Noah and the rest all came out of Leafia's tent, all the members of Loki's clan in the camp had strange looks in their eyes. Under the strange gazes of all the Loki family members around them, Ace and Leafia felt extremely embarrassed. Especially when she learned from Gareth that she had unknowingly burrowed herself into Noah's arms last night and slept with Noah snuggled up to him for an entire night. Ace's face turned even redder than before, and Leafia almost fainted from shyness. As a result, the breakfast ended in a noisy atmosphere, especially Bert. When he learned that the level 1 adventurers other than himself had actually slept together in a tent for an entire night, including Noah and Leafia, his rough face almost distorted from twitching. Whether it was envy, jealousy, or anger at being pushed aside, no one knew. In short, Noah and the rest ended their breakfast in a rather noisy atmosphere. It was only then that the camp was once again shrouded in a solemn atmosphere. Not long after, Noah and the rest came out of their tents and gathered in the center of the camp. Finn, Riveria, Gareth, Ace, Tiona, Tyogni, and Bert were all fully armed, each holding a weapon in their hands and emitting a strong aura. Leafia carried a large backpack and held a magic wand in her hand. Her cute and pretty face was full of seriousness and rigor. Only Noah carried a large backpack, but didn't carry any weapons. He didn't even wear any defensive gear, looking like he was preparing to go on a trip. He seemed out of place. As for the rest of the members, they all gathered around and looked at the group in silence. Under such circumstances, Finn lifted his feet and slowly walked forward, then turned around and faced the group. Looking at his companions in front of him, Finn smiled boldly and fearlessly. "Let's go. To the 59th floor." Chapter 2037. The pitch-black entrance was like the deepest darkness, quietly opening at the bottom of the cliff. At the end of the entrance, there was an extremely steep slope that led all the way down to a labyrinth that emitted a dangerous aura. Whoosh! A chilly wind blew out from the cave entrance. Like the breathing of the underground city, it swept in all directions. Standing in front of such a sinister entrance, Tiona and Tiorn couldn't help but complain. "This place is still as unlikable as before, although it's not my first time here." Hearing Tiona and Tiorn's complaints, Bert pursed his lips and cursed. "This is the lair of those damned monsters. If you want a beautiful environment, go back." "So what if it's the lair of the monsters?" Tiona couldn't help but retort. "Isn't the 18th floor beautiful enough? That's why there won't be any monsters," Bert retorted bluntly. If you like it there, then you can stay there. Alright, cut the crap. Tjorn impatiently interrupted the two's daily quarrel and looked at Finn. Leader, what do we do next? Do we just charge in? Leafia asked nervously. Don't we need to get into formation first? We'll talk about that later. Finn gestured for everyone to calm down and then looked at Noah. Drake, can you take that out? Noah nodded and raised his hand. A dark golden gift card flashed in his hand and bloomed with light. As the light flashed, weapons began to appear one after another and stabbed into the ground. These weapons included spears, battle axes, halberds, dual swords, long swords, and even a double-edged sword that was as tall as a person. These weapons all have the indestructible attribute, right? Noah immediately guessed the nature of these weapons. Do you plan to use them against those new monsters? The indestructible attribute, as its name implied, was the attribute unique to weapons that would never be damaged. That was the work of blacksmiths who had the ability to develop and create weapons with various attributes, effects, and even abilities. Moreover, if one wanted to create this attribute, they would not be able to succeed without a certain level of attainment in forging. If they only had the development ability of forging, they would not be able to succeed. Therefore, these weapons were all very precious Tier 1 weapons. A new type of monster appeared on the 51st floor. It's an opponent that can dissolve weapons. Finn nodded, confirming Noah's guess. Last time, because our weapons were dissolved by those monsters, we lost most of our combat power. In the end, we could only return to the surface without any success. This time, in order to prevent the same situation from happening again, we must prepare weapons with unbreakable attributes. Finn then looked at the other members of the squad. Riveria and Leafia are sorcerers, so there's no need to worry about their weapons being dissolved. AIC's sword has an indestructible attribute, so there's no need for it. Me, Tiona, Bert, Gareth, and Deleg, each take one. Hearing this, everyone nodded one after another. Oh. Gareth held the battle axe directly and weighed it in his hand. It seems a little too light. Mine is the same. Tiona held the big double blades that were as tall as her body and muttered. Compared to my own big double blades, it feels too light. Mine is heavier. Tiona raised the huge spear and swung it heavily, causing a whistling sound as he said so. But that's right, I usually use curved swords. Now that I'm suddenly using such a big spear, it's natural that it would be heavy. Tisk. Bert pulled out the pair of swords, played with them a few times, and complained. I hope we won't be held back by the weapons when the time comes. In order to ensure that it won't be damaged, although this type of weapon is all forged with the best metal, it emphasizes hardness and durability. Naturally, it will be somewhat lacking in sharpness. Finn pulled out the long spear and said to everyone. Its power is probably comparable to a level 2 weapon, but it will definitely not be damaged. If we encounter the new species of monsters last time, we won't have to be restrained this time. Just go ahead and fight without worry. Finn's words made Gareth, Bert, Tiona, these warmongers, show a somewhat sinister smile. Obviously, in the previous expedition, everyone had suffered a lot from the new species of monsters. Noah stepped forward silently, pulled out the last sword, and held it in front of him. The whole body of the sword shone like silver. The blade reflected a cold arc of light. Its shape was a little different from A's thin sword. It was closer to a knight's sword and was considered a weapon that Noah could use easily. Holding this weapon with an indestructible attribute, Noah was quite satisfied. In this case, it doesn't matter if I mess around a little. However, as soon as this sentence left his mouth, two young and emotionless voices sounded in Noah's mind. Master would rather use this kind of scrap metal than me. It feels a little complicated. It seems that my mind is gradually transitioning into a weapon. I don't know if I should be happy or worried. Ashtar and Athena's whispers made the satisfaction in Noah's heart disappear without a trace. He could not help but smile bitterly. Seeing the bitter smile on Noah's face, A spoke softly. What's wrong? Nothing. Noah shrugged. It's just that the little girls here are starting to get jealous. Little girls. Ace tilted her head in confusion. All right, let's stop chatting. Finn spoke, and everyone's attention was focused on him again. In addition to the indestructible weapon, I also brought a large number of magic swords. The two rear guards who are also acting as support, that is, Drake and Leafia, will carry them. There are also items for replenishment. This time, we are so well prepared that we can't afford to fail again. Finn's words made everyone respond in unison. Of course. Gareth, the same failure will not be allowed. Riveria, let me settle the score from last time with this one. Tiona, it won't be easy to repay the debt you owe us. Tiona, in short, we just need to kill them all, right? Bert, I will try my best not to be a burden to everyone. Leafia, amidst the chatter, Noah and AIC looked at each other and nodded with tacit understanding. Then, let's arrange the formation. Finn began to allocate the members. Vanguards, Tiona and Tiona. Midfielders, Ace and Bert. Rear guards, Drake and Leafia. Riveria and Gareth will be at the back. I will be in charge of roaming and commanding. Follow this formation. Once we enter the 51st floor, we will immediately head to the 52nd floor. Don't get caught up in the battle. Leave the magic stones and dropped items there and collect them on the return journey. Anyway, at this time, other than us, there won't be a second team in such a deep floor. Finn swiftly made the arrangements. Don't engage in unnecessary battles and don't waste resources. Try to preserve your stamina and items. Our goal is not the petty gains on the 51st floor but the unreached area, the 59th floor. Finn turned around and looked at the pitch-black cave entrance. Then, he took a deep breath. Go! With this short word, the vanguards, Tiona and Tiona, dashed into the cave entrance. They didn't stop. Roar! 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 Almost at the same time, at the starting point of the 51st floor, several monsters in the shadows suddenly roared. Like frenzied beasts, they pounced on Tiona and Tiona who had landed on the ground. These monsters had been lying in ambush at the entrance. As soon as their prey entered, they would attack immediately. However, Tiona and Theogony were already prepared for this. You're in the way. Get out of my way. The two Amazonian girls completely transformed into berserkers at this moment. The moment they landed, they immediately reacted and turned into a gust of wind. Instead of retreating, they rushed toward the monsters that pounced on them. Slash! In the next second, huge blades and halberds cut through the bodies of the monsters. A large amount of blood splattered and dyed the delicate bodies of the Amazonian girls red. At this time, the midfielders and rear guards rushed in. Charge! Under Finn's command, everyone stomped on the rock plates and rushed forward. Chapter 2038. Roar, roar, roar. In the dark labyrinth, the roars of the monsters were intertwined into a demonic tune of hell, which fluctuated back and forth in the entire corridor, shaking people's eardrums. A group of gigantic rhinoceroses with a pitch-black luster charged forward like chariots. The roars of the black rhinoceroses shook the eardrums, and the heavy footsteps shook the earth. The group of rhinoceros-shaped monsters that had gone berserk charged forward and filled up the entire labyrinth. Watch me. What are you yelling for? A pair of brown-skinned Amazon girls with slender bodies than any black rhinoceroses rushed forward fearlessly, like ants that overestimated themselves, and raised their weapons high. The situation of the battle was one-sided. However, it was not Tiona and Tiona who fell, but the huge black rhinoceroses that were like tanks. Poochie. The big double blades cut off the limbs of the black rhinoceroses. Boom. The halberds suddenly hit the huge body of the black rhinoceroses. The level 5 Amazon sisters rushed directly into the rhinoceroses in a more violent way than the large group of black rhinoceroses and began a bloody battle. On the 51st floor, the black rhinoceroses were classified as level 4 monsters. Even level 4 adventurers had to try their best to kill these black rhinoceroses. Now that they attacked in large numbers, they were killed by a pair of Amazon girls even though they had an absolute advantage in numbers. The black rhinoceroses' horns that could crush rocks would be cut off cleanly when they encountered the big double blades. The thick skin of the black rhinoceroses that they were proud of would also be directly penetrated when they encountered the halberd. The Amazon girls rushed into the rhinoceroses as if they were in an uninhabited land and killed a large number of level 4 monsters. That scene was enough to stun any LV4 adventurer. However, in the face of this brilliant result, the Amazon girls were extremely dissatisfied. The power of this weapon is really a bit weak. It made me waste a lot of effort to cut the black rhinoceroses in half. Sure enough, before facing a new species, it's better to use your original weapon. While complaining, the Amazon girls continued to kill. They did not stop halfway and killed all the black rhinoceroses that they passed by, splashing blood on the ground. Pieces of magic stones fell to the ground. One by one, the loot started rolling down the stairs. These magic stones and dropped items, any one of them could be sold for hundreds of thousands of Varus on the surface. However, the Amazon girls did not care about this. They only fought forward and did not want to stop at all. In this way, it was inevitable that the monsters on both sides would be killed. The black rhinoceroses that were not killed suddenly let out a terrifying roar, as if they intended to pincer attack the people in the middle of the passage. Ace! Bert! Finn's voice immediately. Got it. How troublesome. Ace and Bert, who were in the middle, immediately turned around. One took the left side of the team, the other took the right side of the team, and faced the black rhinoceroses that were attacking them from both sides. Suddenly, the silver-white sword flashed and the thunderous kicks exploded. It was like a thunder that could sweep away thousands of armies, enveloping the black rhinoceroses like a violent storm. Poochie. Every flash of the silver-white sword could take away the life of a black rhinoceros. Bang! Every kick was as fast as lightning, and it could send a black rhinoceros flying like a rubber ball. Ace and Bert killed the fishes that slipped through the net just like Tiona and Tiogni. They did not stop and kept running forward. Under the fierce attack of the 4 level 1 adventurers, none of the black rhinoceroses that came from the front could touch the 2 adventurers who were protected in the middle. Even if 1 or 2 black rhinoceroses suddenly rushed into the defensive circle while Ace and Bert were busy killing, they would immediately be pierced between their eyebrows by a long spear and die on the spot. Of course, that was the work of Finn, who was wandering in the team. Just like that, the group of people hurried on without stopping, charging at the fastest speed possible. During this process, the underground city was constantly rioting. Crack! A hair-raising cracking sound rang out. Rumble! Groups of black rhinoceroses broke through the walls on both sides of the maze that had cracked open. They brought along flying debris and thick sand as they roared and continued to surge forward. In the end, from the moment they entered the 51st floor of the underground city, even though the team went straight for the entrance of the 52nd floor, they were still met with an endless wave of attacks from the monster army. This was the deeper level. It was completely different from the upper, middle, and lower levels. It could be said that there was an endless amount of monsters in this area. In such an area, once the number of monsters reached a certain level, the underground city would stop spawning. However, once a monster was killed, the underground city would immediately spawn a new one, so there would never be a lack of monsters in this area. When this characteristic reached a floor like the 51st floor, it was even more terrifying. At the very least, the 4 level 1 adventurers in the vanguard and middle guard had been desperately waving their weapons since they entered the 51st floor, slaying the attacking monsters. However, they didn't see the number of monsters decrease in the slightest from the beginning to the end. The army of monsters was still charging forward, and the roars and tremors of the earth were endless. Naturally, in addition to the front, there was also an army of monsters surging from the back. They had truly filled up the entire passage of the maze. The monsters in front were dealt with by Tiona and Tyogni. The monsters on both sides were dealt with by Aze and Bert. As for the monsters in the back, they were naturally dealt with by Gareth and Riveria, who were at the bottom. The omen of the end, the pure white snow, in the face of dusk, roll up the gale, the wand in Riveria's hand began to bloom with light. The sealed light, the frozen earth, the blowing snow, the 3 harsh winters, my name is Alpho, her pitiful red lips uttered a pleasant incantation that echoed in the rocky passage filled with the roars of monsters. The next moment, the spell that Riveria had prepared was completed. Ecstasy, Winter of Fimble. Suddenly, gusts of cold wind began to swirl. The cold wind turned into 3 storms that were mixed with bits of snowflakes. Like a wave, they surged violently in the passage. It was as if there were 3 blizzards wreaking havoc in the passage, rolling up gusts of cold air. This was the spell of Eulalie's most powerful sorcerer. A wide area of freezing magic swept out. Everywhere it passed, the black rhinoceroses were frozen into ice. They sat on the ground like ice sculptures. It's still the same powerful spell. Gareth laughed out loud. He grabbed the battle axe in his hand and flew out like a cannonball. As the battle axe in Gareth's hand fell up and down, the black rhinos that were frozen into ice were all shattered. Like ice bombs, they exploded one after another and scattered all over the ground. During this time, Finn, who was wandering around the corners, also thrusted out his spear very neatly. As he thrust it and pulled back, the ice sculptures were also shattered and exploded all over the place. So powerful, the activity of the level 1 adventurers made Leafia almost dumbfounded. Noah, who was following Leafia closely at a neither fast nor slow pace, also nodded. He had some calculations in his heart. The strength of AIC in her party was indeed not bad. Not to mention others, the strength of level 5 Tiona, Tyogni, and Bert was not inferior to an S-rank sorcerer. If they were in Fairy's Tale, they would definitely be able to become the new generation on par with Naz and Gray, right? And Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, who had reached level 6, were even above them. In particular, AIC, in Noah's view, was already not inferior to Alusha before the Great Demonic Arts competition. All of them have the standard of an S-rank sorcerer, however, even the combat experts of LV5 and LV6 were only at the level of S-rank magic shooters. If we don't count the gods who sealed their own powers out of boredom, it seems that the power level of this world is generally not high. Just as Noah was deep in thought, Leafia suddenly opened her eyes wide and shouted, "Hey, you're in the middle of a fight. Leader. A new type of monster is here." Chapter 2039. When Leafia's voice sounded clearly amidst the roars of the black rhinos that filled the entire labyrinth, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan were shocked. They raised their heads abruptly and looked ahead. Noah also cast his gaze to the back of the charging black rhinoceroses. Then, he saw it. He saw a disgusting monster with a yellowish-green body that reminded people of the epidermis of plants. It looked like some kind of larva, with its upper body bulging like a hill and its lower body soft like a snail's. It had countless short legs and looked quite disgusting. The monster's swollen yellowish-green epidermis had colorful patterns everywhere. Flat arms without thickness stretched out from the left and right sides of its body. There were also 4 cracks at the front, as if there were fingers. When Noah saw the monster, the first thing he thought of was a slime. However, Slimes were creatures made of mucus, while the monster in front of him had solid flesh and countless short legs like a larva and flat tentacles like a devil ray. Even with Noah's eyes that had traveled to many worlds, such a monster could only be described as disgusting. In fact, the only one who could be considered to have a normal girl's heart, Leafia's pretty face had long turned green. What made Leafia's face turn green was that there was more than one such monster. A group of new monsters of different sizes surged out from a corner of the labyrinth in front of them in groups. Like lumps of yellowish-green meat squirming, they filled the entire passage and crowded together in the passage ahead. In the next second, everyone saw it. The front end of the lumps of meat split open, opening a gap covered with disgusting mucus that looked like a mouth. Seeing this scene, Noah's eyes suddenly flashed. Finn also opened his eyes wide. Then, Finn immediately shouted loudly. "Charge! Turn into the fork in front." Finn's shout brought everyone back to their senses. Hiya dash! Tiona and Tiny, who were in the vanguard, quickly beheaded 2 black rhinos. Then, they took the lead and rushed into the fork in front of them with the whole team. Almost at the same time, the larva-type monsters opened their mouths and sprayed out a stinky liquid. Suddenly, a large amount of purple-black liquid formed a surge. Like sewage flowing through a drain, it violently washed the entire passage in front of the larva-type monsters. Accompanied by a bone-chilling sound, everything that came into contact with the purple-black liquid, whether it was the floor, the walls, or the ceiling, seemed to have been corroded. More than half of it was dissolved. The black rhinoceroses that were still charging forward were directly swept into the purplish-black current, letting out a series of shrill cries. Soon after, even their skin and bones were corroded, like molten steel, causing one's scalp to go numb. Finn and the others who rushed into the fork clearly saw this scene. They saw this scene. On the other hand, Noah finally understood why those monsters could dissolve weapons. It wasn't because they knew how to use this type of attack. It was not just a weapon. No matter what it was, as long as it came into contact with the corrosive liquid, it would only end up being corroded. It was no wonder that in the last expedition, Loki's minions whose weapons were dissolved had to retreat. If even the weapons were dissolved, facing such a monster empty-handed, even if it was a LV-5 or LV-6 level 1 adventurer, whoever touched it would die. Even if they didn't die, they would end up seriously injured. This group of hateful monsters. They're still so disgusting. Tiona couldn't help but curse. What should we do, Finn? Finn! Bert yelled as he pulled out the 2 swords with indestructible properties from his waist. Do we kill them? Don't talk nonsense. We're not here to take revenge. Even if we want to take revenge, we don't need to rush to take revenge now. It won't be too late to take revenge later. Finn replied without hesitation. Although we've prepared weapons and magic swords with indestructible attributes to deal with these larva-type monsters, considering that there may be more of these monsters on the later floors, we shouldn't use the precious weapons and magic swords here. Let's just rush directly to the entrance of the 52nd floor. Finn's words were not without reason. Although weapons with indestructible attributes could guarantee that they would never be damaged, it didn't mean that they would not be worn out. As long as it was a weapon, if it was used for a long time without maintenance, its sharpness would decrease and its power would weaken. The same was true for weapons with indestructible attributes. Even if it could guarantee that it would never be damaged, if it was used for a long time, or even let the weapon come into contact with the corrosive liquid, its sharpness would definitely decrease greatly. As for magic swords, they were a consumable item. If they could be saved for later, of course, it would be best to save them. So, continue to maintain the formation and rush forward. There are 2 forks in the next road, both leading to the entrance of the 52nd floor. Finn ordered. We'll take the left one directly, that one is closer to the entrance of the 52nd floor. Everyone nodded in agreement. However, at this time, Noah and AIC spoke at the same time and said this in unison. No. Take the right one. Everyone was stunned. Even Noah and AIC looked at each other with a startled expression. Obviously, they didn't expect each other to say the same thing. Under this situation, it was Finn who reacted first. What's wrong? Finn asked. Did you guys discover something? Noah and AIC nodded at the same time. Although the left path is closer to the entrance of the 52nd floor, it has been filled with monsters. Noah pointed at his forehead. Since the beginning, I've felt a large amount of strange aura from there. I'm afraid it's the new type of monsters. Is that so? Finn nodded thoughtfully and looked at AIC. AIC, did you notice it too? Yes. AIC nodded her slender chin and said. In the wind, there are many monster scents. Wind spirit scamper. That was the only magic that AIC had. It was an additional magic that could wrap the wind around the limbs, body, and even weapons to increase attack, defense, and speed. It could even give her the ability to fly for a short distance. When she first met Noah, AIC, who thought that Noah was a pervert who peeped at the goddesses bathing, used this magic to fight with Noah. Through this magic, although AIC had just been promoted to LV6 not long ago, her strength could almost be said to be at the top even in LV6. Now, because Crush had not been perfectly controlled, AIC was wearing a bracelet that restricted the activation of magic, and even her own magic was sealed. However, the sharp senses brought by magic still existed, allowing AIC to feel some movements and abnormalities brought by the surrounding wind. Therefore, AIC was able to find a large number of larvae monsters in the left passage ahead, just like Noah, who had excellent sensing ability. Since Drake and AIC said so, then it must be correct. Finn did not hesitate to cancel the decision just now. Considering that the passage on the left is occupied by a new type of monster, even if it's closer to the entrance of the 52nd floor, once we start fighting, it'll take longer. More importantly, we'll have to use up the items we have on hand. It's not worth it. Let's take the passage on the right. Got it. Everyone agreed without hesitation. The group began to charge forward again, killing the newly produced monsters that broke through the walls on both sides of the passage. They rushed into the right passage like a hot knife through butter. Leafia, who was protected in the middle by a group of level 1 adventurers, gritted her teeth and tried her best to keep up. Noah, who was also protected in the middle, looked around at the monsters that broke through the walls. His dark eyes narrowed slightly. As if to respond to Noah's thoughts, Athena's voice sounded in his heart. It seems that the larvae are not ordinary monsters. This was what Noah was thinking. The reason why Noah thought so was very simple. This was because none of the monsters that were born from the surrounding walls were the so-called new species of monsters. In that case, Noah had to be suspicious of one thing. Are those monsters produced by the dungeon? Chapter 2040. As mentioned before, from the 51st floor onwards, the dungeon finally had the appearance of an underground maze, and the structure was a formal maze. Even if there was a map, if one accidentally went the wrong way, one would immediately be dizzy, and then be swallowed by the monsters that constantly broke through the walls. Finally, one's strength and props would be exhausted, and they would end up being eaten by the monsters. Under such circumstances, the most taboo to enter the 51st floor was undoubtedly rushing. Once rushing and going the wrong way and falling deep into the maze, then no matter how powerful the team was, if they could not find the exit to the 50th floor, they would die sooner or later. At that time, when Noah got lost on the 51st floor, he completely relied on the strength that far exceeded the monsters on this floor. No matter what monsters came, they were all killed in an instant, ignoring the threat of monsters, and with the help of props, he found the exit to the 50th floor and left the maze. Even so, Noah was still trapped in the maze on the 51st floor for 3 whole days. This time, they didn't have the omnipotent treasure vault. If they got lost again, they could only force their way to the top. Therefore, on this floor, rapid marching was an absolute taboo. However, this saying obviously did not work on the people of Loki's clan. Turn left at the fork in front. Next is right. Go straight ahead. If there are 3 forks, immediately rush into the middle one. In the rush, Finn kept giving instructions in a very clear tone, leading the adventurers of the whole team to turn left and right, and they didn't know how many laps they had turned, but he still very calmly gave instructions on the route without the slightest hesitation. Obviously, Finn had already thoroughly mastered the terrain of the 51st floor and firmly memorized the map in his mind. However, since they wanted to enter the unreached area, they still had to grasp this degree. Therefore, no one doubted Finn's instructions. Even if they had completely lost their heads after turning left and right, they still ran on the correct route, constantly closing the distance to the entrance of the 52nd floor. Throughout the entire process, the monsters that broke through the walls were still coming in an endless stream. Similarly, the horde of monsters that rushed in from the front and back of the tunnel did not stop at all. On the other hand, Ace, Tiona, Bert, Finn, Riveria, Gareth, and the others used the most efficient methods to slay the attacking monsters. They didn't care about the magic stones and loot at all. While protecting Noah and Leafia, they charged into the tunnel. Gradually, the black rhinoceroses were no longer the only attacking monsters. There was also a spider-like monster that could leap over roofs and walk on walls. Seeing this situation, AIC and the rest were not discouraged. Instead, their spirits were lifted. The types of monsters are starting to change. Finn licked his thumb. We're almost at the entrance to the 52nd floor. Just as Finn said, the entrance to the 52nd floor soon appeared in front of everyone. It was also a hole, but there was a staircase leading to the floor below. Tiona. Theone. Destroy all the surrounding walls. Finn's eyes glowed as he gave the order. Riveria. Gareth. I'll leave the monsters behind to you guys. The level 1 adventurers who were named immediately started to move. Hey! Break for me. Tiona and Theone rushed out from the left and right. The dual blades and axes in their hands were like windmills as they heavily smashed into the rock walls on both sides of the entrance to the 52nd floor. Boom! In the simultaneous roar, the solid rock walls were instantly destroyed by the 2 slender Amazon girls, and a large amount of sand was raised. On the other side, Gareth and Riveria, who were in charge of bringing up the rear, suddenly turned around and faced the tunnel behind them. Roar, 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 roar. A large group of spiders and rhinoceroses let out terrifying roars as they charged forward. Ha 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 ha. Watch me. Gareth let out a loud laugh and grabbed the battle axe in his hand. His short but incomparably strong body leaped into the air. In the next moment, the battle axe in Gareth's hand also turned into a dancing windmill and smashed into the ceiling fiercely. Boom! A muffled explosion resounded through the air. The ceiling that was smashed by Gareth scattered countless pieces of gravel, which piled up at the bottom of the tunnel and blocked the entire passage. Ecstasy Winter of Fimble. At the same time, Riveria completed her chant, raised her magic wand high, and released ice magic. 3 snowstorms swept up and blew in all directions, freezing the gravel blocking the passage, the damaged walls on both sides, the shattered ceiling, and even the intact ground into ice, creating an ice cave in an instant. Boom! In the midst of a muffled sound, the ice cave suddenly trembled. It was the movement caused by a large group of monsters crashing into the blocked passage. However, under the freezing of Riveria's ice magic, the passage had been firmly blocked. Even if a large number of monsters crashed into it, it did not cause the slightest crack in the frozen wall of gravel. The monsters who lost their prey roared unwillingly behind the wall, making the adventurers of Loki's family in the ice room smile at each other. Alright, the passageway is completely blocked. The surrounding walls are also damaged. Before the damaged parts of the dungeon are repaired, there won't be any monsters here. Finn heaved a sigh of relief and lowered the spear in his hand. Everyone take a rest and recover your strength. Riveria also needs to recover the mental strength consumed by using magic. Leafia, drink the elixir directly. Rifia said in a flattered tone. Then what about everyone? We didn't consume much physical strength, so we don't need to use elixirs to recover, Finn said. But you're different. If you don't recover quickly, you won't be able to keep up later. It was just like what Finn said. Among the people present, except for Leafia, the rest were still not panting even though they had been running from beginning to end. Only Leafia was short of breath and sweating profusely. It was obvious that she had consumed a lot of physical strength. After all, Leafia was only LV3, and she was also a magic shooter who specialized in magic. If one were to say that Leafia's magic ability was at the S stage, which was the maximum level, resulting in the power of her magic being enough to threaten LV5 and LV6 first-level adventurers, then as a sorcerer who specialized in the magic ability, Leafia's durability ability was much weaker. At least, when she was promoted from LV2 to LV3, Leafia's durability was only at the lowest stage, and her current durability was also at the I level. In order not to lose the group of first-level adventurers, Leafia ran at full speed, which naturally consumed a lot of physical strength. If she only rested and wanted to recover, it would not be something that could be done in a short period of time. In this period of time when the broken walls of the underground city could be repaired at any time and new monsters would be bred again, Finn naturally had to race against time to let everyone recover. There was no time to waste. After understanding this point, although Leafia was a little unwilling, she still obediently took out the elixir that could restore her physical strength from her backpack and drank it in small sips. As for the rest, they just sat on the spot and began to chat while resting. At this time, Noah came to the entrance of the 52nd floor and looked down as he fell into deep thought. A figure unknowingly came to Noah's side, but she looked at Noah and asked softly, "What are you thinking about?" Noah withdrew his gaze and met AIC's crystal-clear eyes. He shook his head and said softly, "I'm just thinking that there should be a lot of secrets hidden below, right?" Secrets. AIC did not seem to understand Noah's meaning and tilted her head. For example, those new species of larvae monsters, Noah reminded. You have been to this floor many times before, and even reached the 58th floor, but you have never seen those monsters, so you called them new species, right? AIC nodded and confirmed Noah's statement. In response, Noah shrugged and said, "Don't worry about it. I think this matter should not be that simple." Really? AIC asked in confusion. Why do you say so? Because of intuition. Noah smiled faintly and looked down again with a flash of light in his eyes. I have never missed my intuition. Chapter 2041. Dong! 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 In the entrance to the 52nd floor, in the frozen ice room, a series of crashing sounds were constantly transmitted, causing the entire ice room to constantly shake. Sitting on the floor, Tiona and Tiny were resting as they looked at the frozen stone wall blocking the passage, chatting with each other. Those monsters are really stubborn. Don't they know how to give up? Although the monsters on the 51st floor are much smarter than those on the floors above, they are still monsters after all. In terms of intelligence, they can't compare to humans. While Tiona and Tiny were chatting, Bert leaned against the wall and closed his eyes to rest. Gareth and Riveria were also chatting, but they were just passing the time, seizing the opportunity to recover their physical strength and mental strength. In fact, the first-level adventurers didn't consume much physical strength and mental strength. However, in order to face the next floor in their best condition, everyone had to make the best use of their time to recover. No matter how little stamina and mental energy they consumed, it would be too stupid to lose their lives in the mouths of monsters at critical moments because of the lack of stamina and mental energy. Of course, in order to prevent such a thing from happening, the adventurers needed to prepare recovery items. Generally speaking, the main effect of elixirs was to recover physical strength. If one wanted to fill in the missing flesh, stop bleeding, repair broken bones, and heal injuries, they would need to concoct high-grade elixirs with the development ability of harmony. As for recovery of mental strength, they would need to concoct magic elixirs, which also required a pharmacist with the development ability of harmony. Some high-grade pharmacists could even concoct a recovery item called panacea. That kind of item could be said to be able to heal almost any injury in an instant, unless it was a broken arm, a broken leg, or a direct death. Finn had prepared a lot of recovery items, which almost filled Noah and Leafia's backpacks. In addition, in Noah's gift card, Finn had also deposited a large number of recovery items, which was quite comprehensive. The first-level adventurers didn't consume much physical strength and mental strength at all. Even if they used the lowest-grade elixirs and magic elixirs, they could instantly replenish all of their physical strength and mental strength. The reason why they didn't do so was just like what Finn had said. Since they had a chance to rest, they might as well save some items. Who knew if they would run out of items in the future? It was precisely because of this that Leafia was unwilling to use items in the beginning when no one used them to restore themselves. However, if they did not use any tools, Leafia might not have recovered by the time everyone had fully recovered. This could also be considered as a form of hindrance, right? Leafia, who was stuck at a dead end, stayed in a corner with a sullen expression and kept sighing. AIC, who did not know how to console others, could only stay by Rifia's side with a troubled expression. Finn, on the other hand, spread out a map and was confirming the route and terrain that he had confirmed countless times. Podgy, podgy podgy, strange noises could be heard all around. It was the sound of the wall that was first destroyed by Tiona and Tiona, then frozen by Riveria, slowly repairing itself. It was the sound of the solid ice that had frozen it. The dungeon was alive. It could nurture monsters and repair damaged parts. Even if it was damaged, it would quickly recover to its original state. Once those walls were completely repaired, the monsters would be nurtured from inside again, break through the walls, and attack the group of Loki's kin. However, in the case of being frozen by Riveria, these walls should not be repaired so quickly. Therefore, everyone still had some time to rest. During this time, Noah stood in front of the entrance to the 52nd floor and looked down. This scene lasted for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, Finn clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention. "All right, everyone come over." Hearing this, everyone gathered around. Noah also retracted his gaze and came to the group. His gaze immediately fell on the map that Finn had spread out. Then, Finn spoke. "From the 51st floor to the 57th floor, it is the same maze, but the deeper the floor, the bigger the maze. In the 51st floor, we can still make it through smoothly like this, but from the 52nd floor onwards, it is different." Finn's expression was extremely solemn. After all, from the 52nd floor onwards, the common knowledge of the dungeon above the 50th floor is useless. Finn's words made Noah somewhat stunned. The common knowledge of the dungeon was useless. What did that mean? While Noah was feeling puzzled, the rest of the group wore solemn expressions. Even Rifia's face was tense. Clearly, she knew what Finn was referring to. Perhaps Finn felt that everyone knew the reason, so he didn't give any unnecessary explanation. Instead, he said this sentence. "In order to avoid unexpected situations, we still have to take the shortest route to the 53rd floor. We can't tangle with the monsters too much. If possible, it's best not to even kill the monsters. Just repel the parts that are blocking the way. There is no need to change the formation. The rest of you just have to listen to my instructions, understand? Everyone nodded their heads. Finn put away the open map and turned to look at Rafia. Rafia, how is your recovery? I have fully recovered. Rafia quickly said. I have sufficient stamina, and my mental strength was not depleted. Hence, I am in perfect condition. That's good. Finn stood up and raised his hand. Then, let's get into formation. Comrades, we are about to enter hell. This statement made everyone in the squad tense up even more. At the same time, it also confirmed one thing for Noah. From the 52nd floor onwards, there was definitely something that was different from the 51st floor. Could it be the floor master? If there was a floor master on the 52nd floor, it would definitely be level 7, right? If that was the case, Finn and the rest had reason to be cautious. However, after thinking about it for 3 minutes, Noah finally understood what was going on. He understood why Finn said that the 52nd floor was hell. He understood why Finn said that the common knowledge of the dungeon was useless. Let's go. Under Finn's order, with Tiona in the lead, the team suddenly rushed into the cave entrance and rushed down the stairs. Then, at their fastest speed, they followed the black lead-colored labyrinth that was almost no different from the 51st floor, and ran out as fast as they could. Their speed was at least 3 times faster than when they were on the 51st floor. This speed was already the maximum speed that Rafia could display. However, everyone still felt that this was not enough. Their faces were tense, and they kept increasing their speed, causing Rafia to bite her lip. It was as if she had broken through her limit, and she tried her best to keep up with the team. Rather than saying that they were in a hurry, it was better to say that they knew that they would encounter something terrible below and planned to escape. Under such circumstances, Noah also noticed that something was wrong. The team of Loki's clan was like a gust of wind, running wildly in the labyrinthine passageway, causing the sound of footsteps to be constantly heard. Around them, monsters began to appear, but almost none of them chose to approach. Instead, they were like a pack of wolves lurking in the shadows, with red eyes, watching Noah and the others run by. The abnormal situation made Noah frown slightly. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Noah's mind without any reason. The one who suddenly spoke was not Astra or Athena, but Deleg. Deleg only said this one sentence. Partner. There's a dragon's aura. Just as Deleg's voice sounded, Noah's sensing ability was like a radar that had been detonated, feedback waves of scorching aura back to him. Feeling that aura, Noah's eyes suddenly widened. Because that aura was not in front, not behind, and not on the left or the right, but below. Feeling that scorching aura that was getting closer and closer, Noah and A spoke almost at the same time. It's coming. As soon as the voice fell. Kaboom! A deafening roar resounded. Under the ground where the Loki clan's people stepped on a second ago, a violent flame suddenly burst out, digging up the ground, blasting the soil, setting off billowing heat waves and violent shock waves, instantly completely changing the terrain of this space. The ground exploded. Chapter 2042. Boom! The flames that exploded the ground were like an erupting volcano, setting off a scorching pillar of fire. The scorching flames soared into the sky, setting off layers of heat waves while reaching the ceiling of the 52nd floor. The ceiling was scorched black, and it almost did not penetrate and spread to the 51st floor. The red lotus-like flames illuminated the faces of Noah and the others, dyeing the originally lightless 52nd floor into a fiery red color. At this moment, the faces of Ace, Tiona, Finn, Riveria, Gareth, Bert, and the others became ugly. Leafia's pretty face was pale, without a trace of blood left. Even Noah was shocked by the abnormal situation in front of him. That scene was like the detonation of an incendiary bomb, making everyone's heart feel as if it was grasped tightly by a hand that represented death, almost shattering into pieces. Quick! Finn yelled without caring about his image. Full speed ahead. No one objected to Finn's order. Everyone took out their fastest speed, and with a momentum that seemed to want to crush the ground, they turned into a gust of wind and rushed forward. Damn it! Bert's angry curses rang out. Did we get sniped as expected? Sniping. It was indeed sniping. The scorching aura that came from afar all told Noah that something was sniping them and the others. It was on the floor below. Noah finally understood why Finn said that common sense above the 50th floor was useless here. Above the 50th floor, the monsters were all entrenched in their own floors, and there were very few examples of crossing floors. If an adventurer encountered a monster on another floor, the probability of winning 1,000,000 Varus with 100 Varus was not much higher than going to a casino. Now, Noah and the others encountered something even more abnormal. It was not the appearance of a monster crossing floors. It was the attack of a monster crossing floors. Some kind of monster with long-range attack means was on the floor below, like a cannon, aiming at Noah and the others who were marching on the 52nd floor, and sniping. This was absolutely impossible to encounter in the area above the 50th floor. However, Noah just had to encounter it. In this floor that Finn compared to hell. In the next second, Noah and AIC's expressions changed again. The violent and scorching aura once again approached from below at an astonishing speed. Boom! A roar that was loud enough to hurt one's eardrums resounded through the maze again. Behind Noah and the others, the ground was directly blown up by the huge fireball that soared into the sky, setting off raging flames all over the sky, like a fiery red wave, attacking the surroundings. Gareth and Riveria, who were at the back, let out muffled groans. The rest of the people also more or less let out sorrowful cries. If it weren't for the fact that the people here were all powerful adventurers, they would have been blown away by the strong wind and rolled to the ground. The sniping across the floors was still ongoing. Noah. A's. Finn was so anxious that he even called out Noah's real name. Can you feel how many enemies there are? No. No. A's answered with a voice that was much louder than usual while running. The distance is too far. I can only feel the bombardment. I can't either. Noah closed his eyes, activated his sensing ability, and immediately shook his head. The distance is really far, at least below the 55th floor, there is no trace of the enemy at all. Sure enough, it's not possible. Finn bit his thumb. During this period, the scorching fireball once again blasted the ground behind the running group of Rockies, directly melting the thick rock into liquid like magma, covering the ground one after another. Boom boom boom. The ground that had been blasted open by the violent explosion gradually began to crack, causing the rubble to crumble like pieces of trash as they continuously followed the crater and collapsed downwards. In the blink of an eye, one after another large hole appeared in the passage of the 52nd floor. The surrounding was like magma was baked into a fiery red color, like a burning furnace, making people speechless. Under such circumstances, in order to avoid the bombardment from below, the group of Rockies could only run with all their might. They could not stay in the same place. If they stayed in the same place, they would end up being burned to ashes along with the ground. No one wanted to end up like that. Therefore, everyone rushed forward with all their might, hoping to cross the floors as quickly as possible and find the entrance to the 53rd floor. Ha! 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 Not long after, Leafia, who was of a lower level and had weaker stamina, began to pant heavily. Leafia! Finn immediately noticed the situation and ordered with an unquestionable tone. Hurry up and replenish. Recover your strength. Yes. Leafia hurriedly pulled the large backpack on her back, ready to rummage through it for elixirs. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. Noah was the first to notice the abnormality and quickly called out. Be careful. Unfortunately, the group that was focused on the bombardment from below did not react in time. Whoosh! In an instant, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. It was a monster that had been hiding in the shadows since the beginning, watching Noah's group with blood-red eyes, not daring to approach at all. However, when Leafia let down her guard and everyone's attention was attracted by the bombardment from below, the monster hiding in the shadows finally made its move. It was a silver-white snake. Hiss! The silver snake hissed and shot out like a sharp arrow. It passed through Bert, who was beside Leafia, and went straight for Leafia, who was rummaging through her backpack. Leafia seemed to have only just reacted at this moment. She turned her head and looked at the source of the sound of something breaking through the air. There, the silver snake had already scuttled in front of Leafia and opened its mouth, which was filled with two sharp fangs. A fishy smell came from the snake's mouth and hit Leafia's face. At this moment, Leafia felt as if time had stopped for her. Leafia! The first-level adventurers of Rocky's clan cried out in alarm. In the end, only one person reacted in time. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of a sword, a silver sword flashed through the air. Splat! Amidst the clear tearing sound, the silver snake that was scuttling toward Leafia was cut in half by the knight's sword with an indestructible attribute. Blood splattered everywhere. The one who attacked was naturally Noah, who was the one closest to Leafia and was protected in the middle as a support, just like Leafia. Seeing this scene, Finn and the rest could not help but sigh in relief. However, A's expression changed abruptly as she cried out in alarm. Don't! Almost at the same time as A's cry of alarm rang out, Noah suddenly pulled the backpack from his back into his hands and threw it to Gareth, who was in front of him. Yes. In front. Gareth, who was supposed to be at the back, was now in front of Noah and Leafia. The situation happened too suddenly, causing Leafia to fall behind and be overtaken by Gareth and Riveria, who were at the back. As for Noah, in order to save Leafia, he also fell behind. Thus, the first-level adventurers of Rocky's clan all overtook Noah and Leafia and rushed to the front. After throwing the backpack to Gareth, Noah did not hesitate and immediately hugged Leafia. Boom! An earth-shattering roar sounded. Following the explosion of the ground, raging flames that soared to the sky engulfed Noah and Leafia. Noah and Leafia, along with the ground they were standing on, were engulfed by the large fireball that came from the floor below. The pillar of fire soared to the sky and reached the ceiling. Their footing was destroyed, and in the raging flames that soared to the sky, the two figures that were embracing each other fell down together and disappeared in an instant. Seeing this happen with her own eyes, A's head heated up and she did not hesitate to explode, turning into a bullet that shot straight into the raging flames that soared to the sky. At the same time, with a clear clang, a bracelet fell to the ground. Wake up! In the midst of a chant that sounded like a clear spring, a whirlwind wrapped around A's body. Immediately after that, A's rushed directly into the raging flames and jumped into the hole. Boom! Another explosion sounded, but this time, the ceiling above could not withstand the impact of the raging flames and suddenly burst open. Debris fell all over the sky and buried the hole. Chapter 2043. Amidst the explosions, the magma-like hole was buried by the rubble from the ceiling. A thick cloud of dust was raised, and it was extremely pungent. Under such circumstances, Noah, A's, and Leafia disappeared from everyone's sight. A's. Both Tiona and Tiorn's expressions changed. Tisk. Bert also clicked his tongue. Just as he was about to rush over, he was immediately stopped. No one is allowed to return. Finn ordered in a strict tone. We can't stop. Otherwise, we'll be sniped. Keep going. Isn't this a little too much? Bert's expression became abnormally ugly. Do you think AIC will be fine if she brings those two burdens along and roams the lower floors alone? It will be fine. Finn answered without hesitation. As long as that man is here, no matter what, it won't be a problem to keep one life. What we need to worry about is ourselves. Everyone, keep going. This is the commander's order. Finn didn't care whether Bert would follow his orders or not. He immediately turned around and continued to rush forward. Let's go, Riveria also said. Finn's words are always right. Don't think about jumping into any random hole that has been blasted open. Gareth even warned them. With the floor as a barrier, the enemy won't be able to hit us 100%. But if you jump in directly, you'll be exposing yourselves to the muzzle of the cannon. If you die, you can only blame yourselves. After saying that, Riveria and Gareth followed Finn. Will it be fine? Finn is right. With that man here, rather than worrying about them, it's better to worry about ourselves. Tiona and Tiorn struggled for a moment before sighing. Then, they picked up their pace and chased after them. Only Bert was left. He clenched his fists and looked at the buried hole. He cursed angrily. Bastards! After that, Bert followed them and continued to rush through the labyrinth. Kaboom! After an unknown number of explosions, the scorching big fireball turned into a cannonball that soared into the sky and exploded in the entire crater. The soaring flames formed a deadly wave of fire, rolling in the space. In an instant, it enveloped several floors, dyeing everything in its path with a fiery red color, making people think of the inside of a volcano. It was extremely shocking. Terrifying heat filled the entire labyrinth. That high temperature was definitely able to melt a thick piece of steel into molten iron in an instant. If someone was directly engulfed by such a wave of fire, they would definitely turn into ashes in an instant. However, in the midst of such a spreading wave of fire, a brilliant white light suddenly shone. Clank! The dazzling white light suddenly expanded and covered the entire wave of fire in the blink of an eye. Under the cover of the white light, the boiling hot wave of fire suddenly trembled. It was as if it was neatly split apart, bursting out a dazzling white line. Bang! At the moment of the muffled explosion, the boiling hot wave of fire exploded and was truly split into neat blocks. Then, it scattered into sparks that filled the sky and dissipated in the air. Only then did the dazzling white light gradually converge, revealing the scene at the center. There, two figures were tightly hugging each other. They were directly floating in midair and did not fall down. Leafia opened her eyes with lingering fear as she muttered in a daze. I'm still alive. Yes. Noah hugged Leafia's slender waist with one hand and hugged her in his arms. Looking at Leafia, who subconsciously hugged him tightly, he laughed out loud. You're still alive for now, but I don't know what will happen later. Leafia was slightly startled. Under Leafia's startled gaze, Noah lowered his head, looked down, and said indifferently. After all, we're now exposing ourselves to the enemy's cannons. Hearing Noah's words, Leafia's pretty face stiffened. She lowered her head abruptly and looked down. In the next second, Leafia saw it. Hundreds of meters below, in a vast cavern, a few gigantic creatures were standing side by side, looking up at the sky. Their eyes flashed with a ferocious light. Looking at those gigantic creatures, Leafia's heart trembled again and again. No matter in which world, dragons were one of the most powerful creatures. This principle was also applicable in the underground city. All the adventurers believed that in the underground city, among the monsters of the same level, the most powerful existence was the dragon. Unless there was a floor owner. Otherwise, if there were dragon-type monsters on a floor, these dragon-type monsters would definitely be the most powerful existence on that floor. Therefore, out of fear of dragon-type monsters, the adventurers collectively called them the Monster Kings. At this moment, Leafia saw the kings of these monsters. Moreover, they were the Monster Kings from the 58th floor. Ooh, 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 ooh. Amidst the earth-shaking dragon roars, in the cavern of the 58th floor, a few gigantic red dragons lined up and roared at Noah and Leafia in the distance. They were more than 10 meters long, even bigger than the floor owner on the 17th floor, Goliath. They stood on their feet but did not have wings. Looking at those gigantic red dragons roaring at the sky, Leafia squeezed out a voice with difficulty. Cannon dragon. Cannon dragon. That was the main culprit that turned the area from the 52nd floor into hell. It was a type of monster that only appeared on the 58th floor. Like its name, these gigantic red dragons could spit fireballs and launch cannons. Their cannons could bombard the 53rd to 57th floors all the way to the 52nd floor. Therefore, once an adventurer stepped onto the 52nd floor, these cannon dragons would all sense it and launch a merciless sniper attack at the enemy who was 5 or 6 floors away. What did this mean? It meant that once the adventurers stepped onto the 52nd floor, their enemies would no longer be limited to monsters on a single floor like before. From the 52nd floor onwards, the common sense of dungeons would no longer be useful. The reason for this was these cannon dragons. The gigantic red dragons that were more than 10 meters long roared in unison, slowly opening their ferocious mouths filled with sharp fangs. Inside, waves of violent flames began to surge and compress into shape in the mouths of the cannon dragons, turning into gigantic fireballs. The group of cannon dragons pointed their cannon muzzles, dragon mouths, directly above them and spat out scorching fireballs. The gigantic fireballs immediately exploded the ceiling above the cannon dragons, which was the floor of the 57th floor. They blasted the ground of each floor and soared into the sky, all the way to the 52nd floor. The cannons from the 58th floor must have caused Finn and the others to flee in panic, not daring to stay in the same place, right? One of the gigantic fireballs pierced through the ground of each floor that had already been blasted apart and shot toward Noah and Leafia, who were floating in the air. The heat wave had already arrived in front of Noah and Leafia. Just as Leafia's pretty face turned pale and a cold glint flashed across Noah's eyes, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out from above. A figure surrounded by formless wind and waves descended from the sky. Like a dazzling meteor, she shot straight toward the gigantic fireball that soared into the sky. Dong! Amidst the deafening explosion, the silver rapier was like a long spear as it pierced through the fireball that was shooting towards her. Waves of fire surged into the sky, but they were blown away by the wind that lingered around her slender body. Looking at the figure that suddenly descended and was surrounded by wind, Leafia cried out in surprise. Miss Ace. Hearing Leafia's call, Ace, who was holding the indestructible rapier and surrounded by wind, turned her head and looked at Noah and Leafia, who were floating in the air. The expression on her pretty face softened a little. Ace immediately spoke softly. Are you guys all right? I'm fine, Leafia hurriedly replied. As for Noah, he glanced at the surroundings and said, let's go. Something will happen very soon. Why did he say that? Because Noah and the other two were already surrounded. Roar, 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 roar. Amidst a dragon's roar that was completely different from the cannon dragons, purple-blue flying dragons that looked like pterosaurs flew out of the gaps in the floors and swarmed toward Noah and the others. Chapter 2044. In the past, before Loki's clan and Freya's clan had risen, Eulalia also had two of the most powerful clans known as the Double Kings, ruling the peak of the entire Maze City. One of the two clans was called Zeus's clan, and the other was called Hera's clan. Among them, Zeus's clan's main business was to explore the dungeon. Like Loki's clan, they were the most typical exploration-type clans. That clan had once reached the 59th floor, and until now, it still had the highest record of reaching the floor. And after Zeus's clan declined and was replaced by Loki's clan and Freya's clan, no one had ever reached the 59th floor again. Of course, Zeus's clan had also set foot on the 52nd floor and was bombarded from the 58th floor. The cross-floor sniping was not only like a joke, but also made the 52nd to 58th floors a real area. Even if the adventurers were lucky enough to avoid the cannon dragon sniping, it would lead to another danger. The floors were connected. Just like the middle floor had vertical holes that could connect the upper and lower floors, the cannon dragons would forcefully open the vertical holes on the 52nd to 58th floors. Then, in each connected floor, another kind of monster king would appear. That was, in the horizontal holes that connected the vertical holes like an ant's nest, there were flying dragons more than 3 meters long. For these monster kings with wings, the vertical holes that were forcefully opened by the cannon dragons were simply the gates of a cage. Once they appeared, the flying dragons would break free from the cage called the floor and attack the adventurers through the vertical holes opened by the cannon dragons. In other words, this was another kind of attack that ignored the floor. The cannon dragons and flying dragons, which were collectively known as the Monster Kings, were the factors that turned the 52nd to 58th floors into hell. Therefore, Zeus's clan who had set foot here called this area the Dragon's Kettle. It was a true Dragon's Kettle cave. Whoa 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 whoa. The roars of the cannon dragons set off bursts of flames that were compressed between their ferocious fangs. Roar 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 roar. The roars of the wyverns turned into waves that reverberated throughout the wilderness of the maze. While the cannon dragons on the 58th floor continued to bombard the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan on the 52nd floor, a dense group of flying dragons flew out from the horizontal holes on the 56th and 57th floors and surrounded Noah, Ace, and Leafia through the vertical holes. In terms of circumstances, there was really nothing worse and more dangerous than the current development. Not to mention, Leafia could not fly yet. Ace's ability to fly for a short period of time using magic was also about to reach its limit. Faced with the current situation, it couldn't get any worse. Ace's expression hardened. Just as she was about to attack, she was pulled into Noah's embrace by his other hand. Noah, who was hugging Ace with one hand and Leafia with the other, lowered his eyes and looked at the 58th floor several hundred meters below. He suddenly said this. Let's go straight to the 58th floor. Ha! Ace and Leafia were stunned. In response, Noah only said this one sentence. Let's get rid of all the cannon dragons and lure the surrounding wyverns away. This way, Finn and the rest won't be in danger. Ace's eyes lit up. Only Leafia had an uneasy expression on her face. There are only 3 of us. Can we deal with so many cannon dragons and wyverns? Is there a way? Noah curled his lips and smiled. We'll know once we try. As soon as he finished speaking. Swoosh. In the faint sound of the air being torn apart, Noah's figure suddenly turned into an arrow that left the bow and swooped down to the floor below. Roar 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 roar. The wyverns that surrounded them saw that the enemy did not escape and instead rushed down. One after another, they let out angry roars and flapped the wings on their backs. Instead of retreating, they advanced and turned into a tide that surged up violently. In the blink of an eye, the adventurers from the sky and the monsters from the underground met resolutely and collided with a loud bang. There was no suspense. The large group of wyverns that had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers instantly engulfed Noah, Ace, and Leafia's group. The 3 of them were completely submerged and could not be seen at all. However, almost at the same time, a light and lively voice sounded. Wind. In the instant that extremely short chant sounded, a gust of wild wind burst out from the wyverns. Ace, who was surrounded by an invisible whirlwind, waved the thin sword in her hand fiercely, interweaving a series of silver sword flashes. Like a violent storm, she slashed in all directions. Slash slash slash. In the incomparably clear tearing sounds, the large wyverns were sliced into pieces by the sword array made of thin swords that were enhanced by wind and had increased attack power and sharpness. Fresh blood splattered on the ground. At this moment, Ace, who was in Noah's arms, seemed to have transformed into a meat grinder. She weaved a sword dance that sang the song of death, beheading every wyvern that flew away. For a moment, minced meat flew everywhere, blood splashed, and the wyverns' miserable howls before their deaths resounded throughout the world. It was frightening. Undoubtedly, it was such a bloody scene. Ace, who was constantly weaving the sword dance, did not let a single drop of blood touch her body. Her waist-length hair fluttered in the wind, and her cold and beautiful face was suffused with holiness. She gave off a sacred and inviolable feeling. This was the swordswoman. Even if she was as powerful as a ghost, the scene of her battle was as beautiful as a dance. That was why she received the word swordswoman. Hugging the world's most beautiful meat grinder, Noah shot down like a sharp arrow, turning himself and the others into a sharp knife, piercing through the densely packed wyverns that were violently surging towards them. Thus, Noah, Ace, and Lefia's group of 3 crossed the 53rd floor, and even immediately crossed the 54th floor. Through the tunnel forcefully opened by the cannon dragons, they swept towards the 58th floor. Roar, 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 roar. Breaking out of the encirclement while holding an absolute advantage in numbers, the wyverns were furious. One after another, they let out roars that shook the air and chased after them. However, the wyverns seemed to understand how dangerous it was to approach them. They actually firmly hung behind Noah's group, opening their mouths and spitting out scorching flame bullets. These wyverns actually also knew how to use long-range breath attacks. However, there was a clear difference between the wyverns' breath attacks and the cannon dragons. At least, the cannon dragons' fireballs were as large as 3 or 4 meters in diameter, while the wyverns' flame bullets were only the size of a human head. It was obvious that they were proficient in different areas. However, although the quality was not high, the quantity was quite shocking. The flame bullets spat out by the wyverns formed a dense barrage that fell like raindrops, causing Ace's pupils to shrink abruptly. Just as the barrage of flame bullets was about to bombard the group, a violent magical force rose up. Clang! A dazzling white light burst out from Noah, who was carrying a young girl with both hands and had no free hands, and covered the group of 3 that swooped down. As soon as the flame bullets fell from the sky came into contact with the dazzling white light, they immediately paused one after another, and were immediately divided into cubes by the white lines one after another before exploding with a loud bang. The barrage that was enough to make any adventurer of a clan shudder was easily neutralized just like that. Pft, pft, pft. The silver sword sliced through the air, killing one after another flying dragons that were charging at him. Boom, 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 boom. The dazzling white light constantly flickered, shattering the flame bullets that fell from the sky one after another. At this moment, Noah and Ace, one focused on defense while the other focused on attack, broke through the obstruction of countless wyverns along the way, and rushed through several floors as though they were unimpeded. Looking at Noah and Ace, Lefia couldn't react for a long time, and could only murmur softly. So powerful, 2 people. Just 2 people, and they actually strangled a large group of wyverns in hell, which was known as the dragon pot, as though there was no resistance. Compared to these 2 people, she was really nothing. Not only was she of no help, but she was also a hindrance. After all, if it wasn't for her, Noah wouldn't have fallen from the 52nd floor, and Ace wouldn't have rushed down from the 52nd floor as well. In the end, she was still a hindrance. Thinking of this, Lefia bit her lips, and her eyes burned with fighting spirit. I definitely don't want to be a hindrance. Chapter 2045. The roars of the wyverns reverberated throughout the entire underground maze, causing the monsters that could neither fly nor leave their respective floors to tremble. Noah was still carrying Ace and Lefia as he dove down at an extremely fast speed. Dazzling white light bloomed from his body from time to time, shattering all the fiery bullets that attacked him as he plunged downwards without slowing down. However, the closer he got to the 58th floor, the more obvious the obstacles became. Wyverns flapped their wings continuously from the horizontal holes of the various floors and flew out in groups. Like moths to a flame, they swarmed towards Noah and his party in a dense swarm. As time passed, the number of wyverns increased, causing AIC, who was constantly swinging her sword, to feel a little strenuous. At the same time, the great crimson dragon that had been firing cannons at the first-year adventurers of the Loki clan began to turn its attention to Noah, AIC, and Leafia, who were diving down. It roared while aiming its huge mouth that was filled with compressed flames at them. Seeing this scene clearly, Noah and AIC's eyes flashed. Just as the two of them were about to make their moves, a third person's voice rang out. "Proud warriors, archers of the forest, advancing raiders in front, pick up your bows, respond to the voice of your brethren, knock your arrows." The sudden melodious chant startled Noah and AIC. Although they didn't stop what they were doing, they turned their gazes in another direction. "Ignite the flames, lights of the forest, I command you to release your arrows. Fire arrows of the elves, rain down like rain, burn the barbarians." Leafia, who was being carried by Noah on the other side, had raised the wand in her hand at some point in time. She pointed it downwards, her red lips spitting out clear syllables that sounded like water droplets dripping onto a plate. Amidst the melodious chant, an incomparably mysterious magical formation suddenly appeared at the tip of the wand that Leafia was pointing downwards. It wasn't a magical formation in the true sense of the word. In this world, except for a few special spells, magical formations wouldn't appear when the rest of the spells were used. However, if someone had learned the development ability of Magitech, then a magical formation would appear when they used magic. This magical formation represented the development ability of Magitech. It could enhance the power of magic, expand the range of effect, increase the efficiency of mental strength, and various other benefits when using magic. It was the symbol of a high-grade sorcerer. As the successor of Olivelia, the most powerful sorcerer in Orly, it was impossible for Leafia not to have learned the development of magic conduit. Thus, at the tip of Leafia's wand, complex patterns were drawn on the multiple rings that had been constructed using her mental strength that had been converted into mana. The patterns flickered with a thick golden light, illuminating Leafia's beautiful face. In the next second, Leafia opened her eyes. Suddenly, a surge of flames appeared within the magic array, condensing into thick flame spears that filled the area in front of the magic array. Fire javelins. A rain of fire arrows suddenly descended. Fire javelins that filled the sky fell from the sky, explosively shooting down, forming a barrage of attacks that fell downwards like a torrential downpour. Bang, 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 bang. As a series of continuous explosions rang out, a large amount of flames burst forth, causing waves of fire to sweep out. The flames enveloped the wyverns that charged out from the holes on the various floors, engulfing all of the monsters. The wyverns didn't even have time to scream before their bodies were incinerated, and they were buried in the sea of fire along with their magic stones. As for the cannon wyverns on the 58th floor, although they managed to survive by relying on their tough scales, their huge bodies were also continuously bombarded by the rain of fire javelins. They let out painful howls, and the large fireballs that were compressed in their mouths directly exploded, injuring the cannon wyverns' mouths. Ha, 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 Leafia began to pant, and her face became much paler. It was obvious that she had used up a lot of her mental strength. However, Leafia's magic, which used up almost all of her mental strength, allowed Noah and AIC's path to be unobstructed. Even the cannon wyvern's sniping was forced to stop. The result of the battle could not be said to be bad. Finn was right. Leafia was indeed very outstanding. Although she was only at LV3, her strong mental strength and the magic power that had been trained to the maximum level made the elven girl's magic power extremely shocking. Moreover, Leafia also had a skill to assist her. The skill was called Fairy Pursuit. The effect of the skill was very simple, which was to double the effect of attacking magic. The combination of the two made it so that although Leafia was only at LV3, the power of her magic was enough to threaten LV5 and LV6 6 first-level adventurers. Under the surprised gazes of Noah and AIC, Leafia forced a smile. I will also help the two of you, please don't forget about me. This sentence made Noah and AIC laugh. Leafia. AIC said sincerely. Thank you, well done. Noah smiled indifferently. Thanks to you, we are here. Under Noah's words, the vertical hole connecting the 57th and 58th levels was penetrated by Noah. Whoosh! In the sharp sound of the air being torn apart, Noah shot down. His body spun, and he suddenly fell madly. He suddenly kicked hard on the head of a cannon wyvern. Bang! The kick, which carried an astonishing amount of power, caused the cannon wyvern's head to explode. A large amount of minced meat and brain matter splattered everywhere. The big red dragon that had lost its head fell heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of sand. Noah carried the two girls and landed directly on the body of the cannon wyvern that had fallen to the ground dead. The whole place was suddenly silent. A few cannon wyverns widened their eyes and stared above the corpse of their companion that was covered by the sand. Their eyes flashed with ferocious light. Against the ferocious light, Noah, A's, and Leafia slowly revealed themselves amidst the flying sand. They looked at the huge red dragons with different expressions. Leafia was panting as she raised her magic wand. AIC held the thin sword in her hand tightly. Her crystal-clear eyes didn't waver at all. Noah glanced at the surroundings and then met the ferocious eyes of the huge red dragons. The corners of his mouth slowly rose. Ooh, 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 ooh. Roar, 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 roar. The cannon wyverns and the wyverns that surged out from the big hole in the ceiling surrounded Noah, AIC, and Leafia. They let out resounding roars, causing the dangerous atmosphere at the scene to suddenly rise. A battle was about to break out. On the other side, the level 1 adventurers of Loki's clan who were galloping on the 52nd floor immediately noticed the abnormality. Tiona tilted her head and said in confusion. Did the cannon fire stop? It seems so. Tiona frowned. Why did it suddenly stop? Don't tell me there's something else. Bert smacked his lips fiercely. That's enough. No, I don't think it's that. Riveria shook her head. If there's really something else, we wouldn't have been able to escape from the 58th floor in the previous expedition. Also, did you notice? Gareth looked around and said. The wyverns don't seem to have appeared either. In other words, the two biggest obstacles that prevented them from reaching the 58th floor had disappeared. My thumb also stopped trembling. It seems that the crisis is over. Finn suddenly smiled. Needless to say, it must be the doing of those three little guys. Tiona looked at Finn. In other words, Big Brother, AIC, and Leafia have taken care of the cannon wyverns and wyverns. I don't think they've taken care of them. Perhaps they've just restrained them, Finn said. That's why we have to go to the lower floors as soon as possible to support them. Should we jump in from those holes? Tiona asked. Since the cannon wyverns have stopped sniping, we don't have to worry anymore, right? No, even if the cannon wyverns stop sniping, the wyvern's threat can't be ignored. If we jump in recklessly, we might be entangled by the wyverns. That's not worth it. Finn shook his head. That's why we should take advantage of this time to hurry up and advance using the regular route. It'll be faster that way. Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 2046. On the 58th floor of the dungeon. It was the same terrain as the safety floor on the 18th floor. There was no maze or high wall that blocked the view. There was only a huge cavern made up of black lead-colored walls and a ceiling. The difference was that the 18th floor was circular, while the 58th floor was rectangular. Now, in this vast rectangular cavern, cannon dragons and wyverns surrounded Noah, Aes, and Leafia, who were standing on the crimson dragon's corpse from all directions. They let out a chaotic but earth-shattering chorus. The scene was almost no different from the group of dragons formed by 10,000 that Noah had once faced. In addition to the dragon species Monster King, there were all kinds of other monsters on this floor. However, under the wide area attack spell that Leafia had just expended most of her mental strength to cast, the monsters had either been reduced to ashes or were covered in wounds from the bombardment. Compared to the cannon dragons and wyverns, they were no threat at all. The dragon-shaped monsters stared at Noah, Aes, and Leafia's group with ferocious glints in their eyes. Surrounded by such a large group of dragon species monsters, Leafia gripped her magic wand so hard that her hand turned pale. Even Aes' expression became more tense than usual. She obviously felt that the situation was a little serious. There were only a few cannon dragons present, but there were countless wyverns. After all, cannon dragons only appeared on the 58th floor, while wyverns began to appear on the 55th and 56th floors. They would also build nests and continue to accumulate in numbers. With several floors being connected, the number of wyverns that gathered from each floor by relying on their flying ability was naturally staggering. In terms of level, cannon dragons were classified as level 5. Even if there were only a few of them, it was definitely not a joke. Wyverns were only at level 4, but they were recognized as the strongest king of monsters at the same level. Each of them had a combat power close to level 5. Moreover, there were so many wyverns present that it would not be strange even if there were strengthened species among them. As for the monsters that had survived Leafia's AoE attack, it was very likely that they were rare species as well. Rare species referred to rare monsters that were extremely rare and rarely appeared on each floor. Enhanced species referred to monsters that had killed other monsters and devoured their magic stones. They were enhanced monsters that were more powerful than monsters of the same species. These two types of monsters were much stronger than monsters of the same species and level. If there was a rare species among the monsters surrounding this place, then they had to be careful. If there was a strengthened mutant in the group of wyverns, they would have to be careful. Wyvern was originally the strongest existence in the LV4 level. If it was strengthened, it would be LV5. If ignored, it would be fatal for every adventurer. In addition, the red dragon was eyeing them covetously from the side, ready to open its fangs and spit out the most powerful cannon at any time. This was a fatal situation. If it weren't for the fact that she believed that the man and woman in front of her had the strength to resolve all crises, and she had the idea of doing her best to help them, Leafia really couldn't guarantee that she could continue to stand and not run away. Let's deal with the cannon dragons first. Aes raised her rapier and stared at the red dragons with her golden eyes. Their threat is the greatest. The highest floor reached by Loki's family was the 58th floor. In the past, when Aes and her party stepped onto the 52nd floor, they were directly attacked by the cannon dragons. As a result, they were caught off guard and were seriously injured. They fell onto this floor and lost all their supplies. In the end, they tried their best to escape. As a member at that time, Aes naturally understood how dangerous it was to continue to keep these cannon dragons. Of course, for Noah, it didn't matter which side he dealt with first. He could even deal with them all at once. However, at this moment, Noah's heart moved. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the rock wall at the north end of the 58th floor. There was a passage to the 57th floor. However, on that passage, countless yellow-green pieces of meat suddenly rushed in and blocked the passage. That's a new species of monster? Leafia exclaimed. Aes furrowed her brows tightly and finally revealed a troubled expression. In this situation, they still had to face a group of larvae monsters that could corrode anything. It was really terrible. Only Noah noticed that something was wrong. That's not right. Noah muttered. Those new species of monsters aren't coming for us. It's not coming for us. Aic and Rifia were stunned. Then, an unbelievable scene happened in front of the three of them. A group of larvae monsters that rushed out of the passage actually stood up on the backs of the monsters, growling at Noah and the others. They opened their mouths and spat out a large amount of corrosive liquid. The monsters did not expect to be attacked from the back by their own kind. They did not even have the time to scream before their bodies were completely corroded by the corrosive liquid. Not even their bones were left. The large group of larvae monsters wriggled their bodies as they moved forward. They continued to spit corrosive liquid at the surrounding monsters, eliminating groups of monsters one after another. Noah saw it clearly. After eliminating the other monsters, the larvae used their tentacles to dig out magic stones from the smoking corrosive liquid and put them into their mouths. Seeing this scene, Noah sighed. Aic and Rifia felt that their common sense had been challenged. No. Impossible. Rifia could not help but waver. Swallowing magic stones is something that only strengthening-type monsters would do. Could it be that all the new species of monsters are strengthening-type monsters? That was simply ridiculous. Normally, monsters would not attack other monsters. This was because monsters were all lifeforms that were born in the underground city. They would instinctively not attack each other. However, this was only the majority of the monsters. Under special circumstances or in special environments, some monsters would still kill each other based on the common sense of the law of the jungle. During this process, if a monster swallowed the magic stones of the monsters that it killed, it would become stronger and become a strengthening-type monster. Once the strengthening-type monster had a taste of becoming stronger, it might keep attacking other monsters and swallowing magic stones. However, this was only a small portion of the monsters. The scene in front of them was that all the larvae monsters were swallowing magic stones. An entire race of strengthening-type monsters? Aic and Rifia had never heard of such a thing. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment, the group of flying dragons, which was more numerous, finally noticed the group of larvae that were killing the monsters. They were instantly enraged. One after another, they roared and shifted their attention to the larvae monsters. In an instant, the battlefield was divided into two groups. On one side was the group of monsters formed by flying dragons and other monsters. On the other side was a group of flesh formed by larvae monsters. The two groups of monsters suddenly started killing each other just like that. The larvae monsters spat out corrosive liquid and killed the monsters one by one, continuing to collect magic stones. The group of flying dragons spat out fire bullets continuously, killing the larvae one by one, causing them to fall with smoke all over their bodies. However, every time a larval monster fell, the monster's body would suddenly expand and finally explode, causing the corrosive liquid accumulated in its body to spill out in all directions, corroding its companions into nothingness. Only the magic stones were left, which were swallowed by the larvae that were not sputtered. It can't be. This was the first time Noah had heard of this. Those new monsters can even self-destruct. The corrosive liquid that could even corrode a LV, for flying dragon and self-destruct. Noah, who did not know this, was glad that he did not face the larvae before. Otherwise, Noah did not dare to guarantee that he could avoid being corroded when his body was directly hit by the corrosive liquid. Ooh, 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 ooh. When Noah, Aic, and Rifia were attracted by the chaotic battlefield in front of them, the cannon dragons also began to roar impatiently, flames rising in their mouths again. Their targets were Noah, Aic, and Rifia. Forget it. Noah made a prompt decision. Let's get rid of the cannon dragons that are the biggest threat first. Both Aic and Rifia hurriedly nodded. The battle was about to start. Chapter 2047. Release a ray of light, bough of the holy wood, thou art a famous archer. As the cannon dragons growled and bared their fangs to compress the expanding flames, Rifia subconsciously raised her wand and began to chant. A dazzling magical formation spun on the ground beneath the elven sorcerer and began to expand. It continuously refined Lefia's mental strength into magical power and slowly fluctuated. Awaken. At the same time, Ace softly chanted an incantation, causing a whirlwind to swirl around her and shroud her weapon and body. Snipe, elven archer, shoot through, arrow that will definitely hit. In the next second, amidst Lefia's melodious chant, Ace, who was shrouded in wind, rushed out and instantly got into the arms of one of the cannon dragons. The silver sword in her hand flashed and immediately left a bloody wound on the crimson cannon dragon's body. The cannon dragon howled in pain, but the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It raised its tail and swept it in Ace's direction as if it was sweeping away an army of 1,000. The dragon tail, which had turned into a long whip, carried with it a piercing sound of the wind and swept out like a blurry shadow. Judging from the momentum, if Ace was hit, she would still be injured even if she was protected by magic. However, that would only happen if the attack hit her. Ace, who was riding the wind, had already leaped agilely and avoided the dragon tail. Her body turned into a gust of wind and flashed back and forth in front of the cannon dragon. She held onto the cannon dragon tightly while waving the thin sword in her hand, leaving wound after wound on the cannon dragon's body. Under such circumstances, the other cannon dragons seemed to want to attack Ace from both sides. However, because Ace was entangled in front of their companions, they didn't dare to release the large fireballs they had compressed in their mouths. In that case, regardless of whether they could hit Ace, their larger companions would definitely not be able to dodge the cannon fire. In the end, not only would they fail to hurt the enemy, they would also hurt their own people. With no other choice, the cannon dragons could only let out furious roars and pounce in Ace's direction. Immediately, the golden-haired girl was surrounded by huge cannon dragons. However, Ace used her agility and speed to maneuver between the cannon dragons, dodging their sharp claws and heavy tails. Once she found an opportunity, she would swing her sword and slash at the monsters around her. Logically speaking, the pincer attack of several LV-5 dragon species monsters was extremely dangerous even for a LV-6 adventurer. Not to mention, dragon monsters were originally known as the strongest existence among monsters of the same level. If they besieged a LV-6, it would not take long for them to beat the opponent to death. However, from its name, it could be seen that the cannon dragon was a monster specialized in cannon attacks. As a monster that had been strengthened for the purpose of cannon attacks, the cannon dragon had the terrifying power to snipe adventurers far above the 52nd floor even if they were separated by several floors. But once the cannon fire was blocked, it would not be difficult to deal with it. Ace grasped the weakness of the cannon dragon. By entangling with one cannon dragon, the other cannon dragons were afraid to attack. This way, she beautifully blocked the cannon fire of the cannon dragon. She wandered between several cannon dragons and left sword wounds on them. The scene seemed thrilling, but in fact, the situation was more favorable to Ace. That girl can almost be called superb in combat. Undoubtedly, she doesn't even know how to cook. Noah muttered like this, but he did not step forward to help. Instead, he glanced at Lefia who was chanting a magic spell with her eyes closed next to him. When launching magic, no matter what kind of magic it was, it required extreme concentration and correct incantation to succeed. The more powerful the magic, the longer the incantation would naturally be, and the more mana the magic shooter needed to convert. However, if too much mana was injected, it would be harder to control it. If one could not control the mana, not only would the magic not be able to be launched, it might even cause the mana to explode and injure oneself. Therefore, in order to be able to launch the magic smoothly, it was necessary to concentrate on precise control of the mana. Therefore, magic shooters who specialized in magic would generally be arranged in the rear guard position, concentrating on chanting incantations and casting magic under the protection of their companions. However, there were some highly skilled magic shooters who had a way to do two things at once. While accurately controlling the mana, they could also carry out other actions. People called this technique of doing two things at once parallel chant. Riveria was the master of this superb technique. Moreover, as the most powerful magic shooter in Eulalia, Riveria's parallel chant was not just about doing two things at once, or even three things at once, but four things at once. Being able to simultaneously chant, move, dodge, and defend, even at the forefront of the battlefield, one could often see the scene of her fluttering cloak behind her back, like a fairy shuttling through a group of monsters, dancing gracefully. Thus, just like Aeth, the gods also gave Riveria the title of G. In addition, Riveria was able to use a total of 9 types of magic, so the gods called her the 9 devil concubines. Naturally, Rifia had not reached Riveria's level. Because of this, someone had to protect Lifia while she was chanting the incantation. Noah's actions allowed him to smoothly discover another anomaly. He saw that in the chaotic battlefield ahead, a group of larvae monsters that were fighting with the wyverns suddenly seemed to be stimulated by something. They trembled all over, turned their heads, and turned towards one of the directions. That direction was where Noah was. Immediately afterward, a large group of larvae wriggled their bodies while ignoring the wyvern's attack. Instead, they swarmed toward Noah as if they were going to advance toward him. Seeing this scene, Noah was surprised. What happened? As soon as his voice fell, Athena's answer rang in Noah's heart. Those monsters seem to have an overreaction to magic. The 2 little girls you brought with you are using magic now, so it's natural that they'll attract those monsters. Overreaction to magic. Noah frowned and had a guess in his heart. Could it be because of this special characteristic that these monsters attacked other monsters carrying magic stones? I'm not sure, but I did notice something else, Athena said. If you look carefully, you will find that those larvae monsters, in addition to harvesting items called magic stones, are all moving toward the south. South. Noah was slightly stunned, then turned his head and looked toward the south. There was a cave entrance. The passage to the 57th floor was in the north of this huge cavern. The passage to the 59th floor was in the south of this huge cavern. And now, the larvae monsters were all beginning to move toward the south. What did this mean? Just now, those larvae monsters also came out from the passage to the 57th floor, right? Athena said. Now, they are moving toward the passage to the 59th floor. It seems that those monsters want to go to the floors below. There must be something in the floors below that is attracting these monsters. Athena suddenly smiled. My fated one, your intuition wasn't wrong. As Athena laughed, next to Noah, the elven girl's magic burst out. Spiritual light arrow. As Lifia raised the wand in her hand high up, a huge flash of light suddenly burst out, like a thick beam of light that swept straight ahead. All the monsters in front of the flash, whether it was the wyverns, the cannon dragons, or the larvae, gradually disappeared as if they were annihilated. When the flash disappeared, there was almost nothing left on the ground except for a scorched mark. Phew, Lifia exhaled loudly, panting even more heavily than before. AIC, on the other hand, looked at Lifia in amazement, causing Lifia to feel a little giddy. Only Noah noticed. Not only did Lifia's attack not improve the situation, but it also caused the larvae that were entangled with the wyverns to turn around and swarm over. Those monsters are reacting to magic. Chapter 2048. Splat. Splat, splat, splat. As the battle in the vast cavern intensified, the ceiling of the 58th floor, which had been blasted open by the cannon dragons, started to repair itself. As the ceiling gradually repaired itself, the number of wyverns that flew out from each floor decreased. After an unknown amount of time, the ceiling that had been blasted open was completely repaired, and the wyverns on the other floors did not fill in. At the same time, the number of larvae that came out from the passageway to the 57th floor also decreased. Under such circumstances, as the battle went on, the number of wyverns and larvae decreased. In the end, the larvae that had the powerful corrosive liquid as a weapon won the battle. They swallowed the magic stones one by one, wriggled their bodies, and started to move toward the south of the cavern, entering the passageway to the 59th floor. As the last larvae entered the passageway and entered the 59th floor, the cavern became silent. After a while, at the edge of the cavern, behind a dead cannon dragon, 3 figures slowly walked out. Those monsters actually entered the floors below. Leafia held her wand and carried her backpack. She looked at the entrance to the 59th floor in disbelief. It wasn't just Leafia. Even AIC was silent. They collectively hunted monsters of other races and swallowed the magic stones. They collectively moved to the other floors. Without a doubt, this was something that went against the adventurers' understanding of the underground city. However, the larvae that could spit out corrosive liquid easily did it. Monsters that can ignore the floors they are on, and monsters that can collectively do what only the enhanced species can do. Plus, there's a huge sale of monsters across floors that rarely happens. So this is the real reason why the so-called common sense of the 50th floor and above is useless here. That's right. Noah looked around the cavern that had become a mess. After a while, he suddenly smiled. Things are getting more and more interesting. It was the right decision to come here. Compared to Noah's relieved smile, the surrounding environment was extremely miserable. There were places that were charred because of Leafia's magic. There were also places where the corrosive fluid of the larvae monster had become scorched and emitted a poisonous gas. There were also places that were full of craters because of the flying dragon's fiery bombs. There were also places where the magic stones were taken away by the larvae, and the bodies of the monsters were reduced to ashes. His appearance was as if he had been attacked by artillery. It was a horrible sight to behold. Those new monsters seemed to only be after the magic stones. The monster's loot seems to have been left behind. Noah stepped on the charred ground and counted the loot around him. Wyvern's fangs, wyvern's nails, wyvern's skin, and wyvern's skeleton. These are all valuable drops. If we collect them all, we can sell them for tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. There are no more magic stones, AIC murmured as she followed behind Noah. Only the magic stone of the cannon dragon that we killed hasn't been retrieved yet. That was why Xiao Long's corpse was still there. Only by retrieving the magic stones would the monster's corpse turn into ashes. Otherwise, it would be no different from a human and leave behind a corpse. Then let's go retrieve it. Noah shrugged. Otherwise, we've been hiding for so long. It's a little boring. When he noticed that the larvae monsters would target magic stones, Noah stopped Leafia, who was planning to continue using magic. He even called back AIC, who had killed a few cannon dragons, and brought the 2 girls to hide. Without magic stones as a trigger, the larvae monsters targeted the monsters on this floor. They helped Noah, AIC, and Leafia to clear out the monster horde that could be considered an army of thousands. Noah and the rest reaped the benefits. Although the magic stones would be taken away, the larvae monsters did not target the loot. This batch of Varus loot, which was worth hundreds of millions, went into Noah, AIC, and Leafia's pockets. But, are we going to start collecting the loot now? Leafia asked, a little surprised. The loot here is very big. It takes up a lot of space in the backpack, right? Hearing that, Noah looked at Leafia with a half-smile, reminding her. With the tool called the gift card, Noah did not need to worry about the capacity and weight of the items he carried. Moreover, compared to this, shouldn't you be more worried about yourself? Noah sighed as if he saw through Leafia's stubbornness. You've used a few powerful spells. You must have used up a lot of your mental strength. It's best to replenish it first, right? Ugh. Leafia groaned as if she had been poked in a sore spot. This elven girl had always thought that it would be better to leave the precious items for the first-level adventurers to use instead of using them herself. That would be more beneficial for the upcoming exploration, right? However, this idea was obviously a dead end for Leafia. At this point, you should have realized that your magic can also play a role in the strategy this time, right? Noah said bluntly. You've been going down a dead end and causing your mental strength to be in a state of great depletion. When you're really needed later on, you can't even use a single spell. That will really be a burden. Are you willing to see that? Noah's words once again poked at Leafia's sore spot, dragging him down. That was something that Leafia could not allow herself to do. It's not just Leafia. Ace also needs to replenish. You've also used up a lot of your stamina and mental strength in the battle just now, Noah said in a tone that did not allow for any exceptions. Don't worry about not having enough recovery items. Finn is well prepared. There are still a lot of items in my gift card. You don't have to be so stingy for your own clan members. Upon hearing Noah's words, Ace and Leafia lowered their heads as though they were too ashamed to lift their heads. In the end, the two young ladies obediently took out spiritual potions to replenish their stamina and mental strength from their backpacks and started replenishing themselves. Meanwhile, Noah listened attentively to Athena and Draeger's words. I didn't expect the underground city to be able to nurture the dragon race, Draeger said in disbelief. If Arubian were to witness this scene, he would definitely be shocked, right? Although nurturing life is the instinct of every race, what the underground city has done is equivalent to creating life, Athena said thoughtfully. That's the territory of God. It seemed that Athena and Draeger had their own thoughts after witnessing the incredible underground city with their own eyes. On the other hand, Aster didn't seem to be interested in it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have remained silent. As for Orpheus and Lilith, they must be hiding in their gift cards and observing silently, right? At this thought, Noah looked towards the entrance of the passage in the south of the cavern again, feeling a little restless. Should I go in and take a look? When Noah had such an idea, at the entrance of the passage at the north end, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan finally arrived late. Ace. Leafia. Tiona immediately pounced over and hugged Ace and Leafia. Are you alright? Tyogni also came over. After sizing up Aic and Leafia, he heaved a sigh of relief. Finn, Riveria, and Garrett's expressions also relaxed. They looked towards Noah and exchanged glances with Noah. Then, they looked at the messy surroundings and immediately understood what had happened. Only Bert crossed his arms and glanced at Noah, Ace, and Leafia before speaking softly. What a nuisance, I'm sorry. Leafia stepped forward and bowed to everyone. It's all my fault. You were indeed negligent. You shouldn't have let your guard down even during the replenishment period. Finn shook his head. However, you were in the middle of the group and were protected by us. We allowed the monsters to break through the protective circle and attack you, causing you to be hit by the cannons. If not for Draeger, we would have lost a comrade. This is also our negligence. Everyone has to reflect on it. Everyone immediately lowered their heads. Chapter 2049. From the 50th floor all the way to the 58th floor, it should have only been about half a day, right? However, in just half a day, the danger was very obvious. Especially when they encountered the cannon dragon's attack on the 52nd floor. Even though the group of Loki's clan had experienced it once before, there was still an accident. Just like what Finn said, everyone was at fault. Rifia shouldn't have let down her guard during the resupply period. The group of level 1 adventurers shouldn't have overlooked the threat of the monsters hiding in the shadows on the 52nd floor because of the cannon dragon's attack. If it wasn't for Noah saving Rifia, then this young elven girl might have really died in the mouth of the monster. Thinking of this, the level 1 adventurers all fell into silence, and Rafia was a little at a loss. Under such circumstances, it was Noah who mentioned it intentionally or unintentionally. Although the 58th floor has stopped producing monsters now, this is still the monster's nest. Next, we still have to enter the 59th floor of the unreached area. Let's not waste time blaming ourselves. If you want to reflect, wait until we return to the clan to have a reflection meeting. Saying this, Noah sized up Finn's group. Also, you have to hurry up and resupply, right? Seeing Noah sizing up Finn's group, Ace and Rafia noticed. Compared to their own group, Finn's group was in a very bad state. Finn and Bert's bodies were covered in scorch marks, and part of Gareth's armor was cracked. Tiona and Tyogni's brown skin had wounds oozing with blood, and even Riveria's outfit was a little messy. Obviously, in order to reach the 58th floor, Finn's group had fought a lot along the way. Fortunately, you threw the backpack to me before falling here. Gareth let out a rare bitter laugh. If it wasn't for the recovery items inside, we might not have made it here. Not only did we encounter a group of wyverns, but we also fought with a new type of monster, Riveria said. Although we've made sufficient preparations, if we don't have items to resupply, it's really dangerous. Thanks to this, we ended up like this, Tioni said helplessly. I used up all my items not too long ago. These are all accumulated. So, hurry up and give us some panacea, Tiona said weakly. Otherwise, we'll really die. That's it. Bo-Tay curled his lips. Hurry up and take out the items. We need to replenish our supplies. I understand. Leafia hurriedly opened the backpack on her back and took out bottles of elixirs, which she distributed to everyone. After consuming a few bottles of the highest quality panacea, the injuries of the group of level 1 adventurers gradually began to improve. Then, Leafia took out a high-grade magic medicine and handed it to Riveria. Come to think of it, Riveria should have consumed a lot of spirit power along the way. While everyone was replenishing their supplies, Finn was looking at the entrance to the south with a smile on his childlike face. The 59th level, we're finally reaching it. Hearing this, everyone revealed smiles one after another, letting their excitement replace their self-blame. The arrival of the unreached level would prove that Loki's spawn was one of Eulalia's most powerful spawn. After all, that level was only reached by Zeus's spawn who had climbed to the peak. Entering that floor meant that Loki's clan had finally caught up with the footsteps of the clan that was once known as the strongest in the dungeon's exploration. This was undoubtedly a kind of glory for Loki's spawn. In response, Noah, AIC, and Leafia looked at each other. What's wrong? Finn asked directly when he sensed the abnormality in the three. Is there something wrong? Noah and AIC did not speak. Instead, they turned their gazes to Leafia. Leafia hesitated for a moment. Then, she told Finn and the others about the strange things they encountered on this floor one by one. What? Both Tiona and Tioni were shocked. Those new monsters are all strengthened species that can consume magic stones. You're kidding, right? Bert's eyes became fierce. I've never heard of an entire race of enhancers. Riveria and Gareth also furrowed their brows tightly. My thumb is tingling, which tells me that this is definitely not a normal thing. Finn narrowed his eyes and looked at AIC. And then? Did those new monsters enter the 59th level? Yes, AIC nodded and said softly. I wanted to chase after them, but Noah didn't let me. Of course he won't let you go, Noah said in annoyance. Who knows what's on the 59th level? And what if Finn and the others came right after you left? That's right, Finn agreed. We were attacked by the cannon dragon on the 58th level on the 52nd level. The levels below must be even more dangerous. AIC, even if you once killed a LV, 6th floor master alone, I won't let you do whatever you want. AIC suddenly became dejected. Of course, AIC didn't know that the reason why Noah didn't let her go was actually because he had a little plan. That was to let AIC and Leafia stay here and wait for Finn and the others, then he would go in. Unfortunately, before this little plan could be implemented, Finn and the others rushed over. However, we must be prepared to fight the army of new monsters on the 59th level, Finn said. Although I don't know if those new monsters will continue to go down, it's never wrong to be careful. Finn's words made Tiona and Tiorn's face bitter. Do we have to fight those disgusting monsters again? Please, spare me. Not only can those guys spray corrosive liquid, they can also self-destruct. Every time I kill them, I have to dodge them in a hurry. In the end, I still get hit by the splash a few times. I don't have AIC's magic to deflect the corrosive liquid with wind. While Tiona and Tiorn were complaining, Bert was also smacking his lips. Riveria and Garrett's brows were furrowed deeper and deeper, obviously feeling that the situation was getting more and more troublesome. After all, in the last expedition, they couldn't even step into the 52nd level. All of their weapons were dissolved by the larva-type monsters wandering on the 51st level. In the end, they had no choice but to retreat. Now, the 59th level was right in front of them. The monsters that caused them to fail in the last expedition might also be there, so they couldn't help but feel troubled. Hey, Noah, Finn pondered for a moment and then asked. How many magic swords do you still have? About 7 or 8. Noah replied. You've acquired a total of 35 magic swords. Half of them are in the camp for the people in the clan to use. As for the remaining half, some are in the gift card and some are in the backpack. Looking at you guys, the magic swords in the backpack that I left for you should have been used. That's all that's left. 7 or 8. Finn frowned. The situation is a little grim. Finn and the others weren't afraid of the new monster's combat power, but their corrosive liquid. If it was just a spray, it would be fine. The worst thing was that the monsters would self-destruct if they were killed. In this way, close combat would be a lot more dangerous. If there's no other way, then let Riveria and Leafia use magic to deal with the new monsters, Gareth said. Moreover, Riveria also knows how to use defensive magic. With defensive magic, we can be at ease. That's the only way. Finn sighed and then looked at Noah with a serious expression. If it's really necessary, then just do it. Don't worry about us anymore. Noah raised an eyebrow. It seemed that Finn had seen through his plan. Bert, who didn't know what was going on, spoke in disdain. If relying on those small fries was useful, we wouldn't have had to run away the last few times. Shut up. Tiona and Tiona immediately covered Bert's mouth, causing him to struggle madly. The others all looked at Noah. Under everyone's gaze, Noah finally sighed. I understand. Only then did everyone laugh. Chapter 2050. About half an hour later, the group of Loki's family members arrived at the southern end of the huge cavern. Standing in front of the pitch-black tunnel, everyone looked at each other before finally focusing their gazes on Finn. Under the gazes of everyone present, Finn stared at the entrance of the passageway in front of him. He licked his thumb with a thoughtful expression on his face as he muttered to himself. It's a little strange. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. What's wrong? Noah did not care about anything and asked directly. What's strange about it? I've read the records left by Zeus family members. There's a record of the 59th floor. Finn did not turn around and said directly. According to the records, the terrain of the 59th floor is no longer a labyrinth like the Dragon Pot, but a glacial zone with extremely low temperature. Glacial zone. Noah was surprised. No wonder you gave me so many protective equipment with fire essence protection. So it was to guard against this. That's right. Finn nodded. According to the records, there are glaciers everywhere on the 59th floor. It's extremely difficult to move forward, and there's also an unimaginably low temperature. Even a LV5 level 1 adventurer will be frozen stiff and their body will become sluggish. They can barely exert 70% of their combat strength. As for those below LV5, there's a possibility that they will be frozen into ice directly. As soon as these words came out, Leafia, who was only LV3, turned pale. Noah, on the other hand, frowned and looked at the tunnel in front of them. If the 59th floor is really that cold, then it's impossible that we didn't feel a little cold standing in front of the tunnel, right? That's why I think it's a little strange. Finn touched his chin. Could it be that the influx of those new monsters caused some changes on the 59th floor? Not necessarily. Noah shook his head. Maybe the environment on the 59th floor itself will change. The environment itself will change. Tiona blinked. Is that even possible? That's impossible, right? Tiona said doubtfully. I've never heard of any floor's environment changing. Nothing is impossible. Noah shrugged. Even the ability to ignore floors has appeared, an entire race of enhancers, and monsters that move to other floors have appeared. With so many unbelievable things happening, what else is impossible? Both Tiona and Tiorn were speechless. You're right. Riveria closed her eyes. We're the ones who keep saying that common sense above the 50th floor is useless here. That's right. Gareth lifted his battle axe and said the same thing. In this way, no matter how inconceivable it is, it wouldn't be strange. Everyone fell silent. However, not long after, a rough voice interrupted everyone's silence. What's the point of thinking so much? Bote coldly snorted and directly said. Either you go down or scram. We're already here. Is there a third choice? His words were crude, but his reasoning was not. Bert's statement was indeed correct. However, Noah said so. It's not that there's no third choice. Ha! Everyone was stunned. Under everyone's stunned gaze, Noah curled his lips and smiled. We can also learn from those cannon dragons and directly blast open the vertical hole leading to the 59th floor on the 58th floor. That way, we can at least peek at the movements of the floors below and decide whether to go down or not. As soon as this statement came out, everyone was speechless. Is your brain filled with boiling water? Bote couldn't help but yell. Do you think it's so easy to open a hole between floors? Even the magic of an old lady can't do that, right? I can't guarantee that I can do it. Riveria opened her eyes. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Bote calling her an old lady, but her serious personality made her answer honestly. The cannon dragon is a monster specialized in cannon fire, so the power of the cannon fire is amazing. In terms of firepower alone, I shouldn't be able to compete with the cannon dragon. As she said this, Riveria's tone suddenly changed. However, if it's Noah Doria, he should be able to do it, right? That one sentence made everyone reveal a somewhat strange expression. TSK, Bote made a very explicit sound of disgust and spoke in a very displeased manner. Why are you mentioning that bastard? What? Are you jealous again? Tiona giggled and teased. Because you can't do something that little brother Noah can do, so you're upset. It's none of your business. Bote looked as if his tail had been stepped on and exploded. Continue playing with your big double-edged sword. Don't talk too much. Bote's stampeding appearance immediately made everyone laugh. Only Leafia stared at Noah with eyes full of resentment. This caused Noah to feel a chill down his spine and he muttered in his heart. Did I offend you again? Just as the atmosphere between them started to relax, Icy stared at the entrance of the passageway in front of her, looking as though she had lost her soul. Noah was the first to notice the abnormality of this girl who was usually silent and kept her presence to a minimum. He asked in confusion. "What's wrong?" AIC glanced at Noah and continued to stare at the tunnel in front of her. Her eyes began to ripple. Then, AIC clutched her chest and muttered in confusion. "There's a very strange feeling, a very strange feeling." "What kind of feeling is that?" When this thought flashed through Noah's mind, two voices that only he could hear suddenly sounded. "Master." Aster suddenly spoke. "I also have a strange feeling." "The same goes for this concubine," Athena suddenly spoke up as well. "It feels like there's something familiar yet strange in front of this tunnel. To be more precise, it should be below." Hearing Aster and Athena's voices, Noah raised his eyebrows and finally looked at the tunnel in front of him. Noah's intuition told him. In front of this tunnel, there was the answer to the puzzle that appeared after entering the 51st floor. The reason for the emergence of the strange larvae monster might be in front of him. Understanding this, Noah closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they had turned into calmness. "Finn," Noah suddenly said. "Let's move forward." Finn turned his head and looked at Noah. After seeing Noah's calm expression, he nodded. "Our goal is the 59th floor." Finn smiled. "Since we're already here, there's no reason to retreat." Finn then raised his hand. "Let's go." "Okay." Everyone responded loudly. Only AIC was still in a daze. She seemed to be very concerned about the strange feeling that suddenly appeared in her heart. Under such circumstances, a hand suddenly rested on AIC's head. AIC was suddenly startled and turned her head. "Don't think too much." Noah met AIC's gaze and said, "I'm here." Hearing such a short sentence that gave her a sense of security, AIC's heart unbelievably calmed down. The group of people exchanged glances with each other. Soon after, they suddenly charged forward. This was an equally huge cavern. The scale was more magnificent than the 58th floor directly above. The direction of vision also gave a feeling that it was more spacious than the 58th floor. Inside the huge cave, a lush green forest almost filled the entire space. On the ground, there was a verdant grassland, and there were many colorful flowers. The environment could not be described as not beautiful. At the edge of this sealed cavern, on the surrounding rock walls, vines hung all over the high walls, forming a green wall. On top of the wall, countless flower buds of various sizes hung down like silkworm cocoons. It gave the illusion that something was growing inside. This is the 59th floor. In the passage that connected to the 58th floor, Tiona and Tiorn looked at the vibrant scene in front of them, dumbfounded. "Finn," Bert said in a doubtful tone. "Are you sure this is the Ice River Zone?" Finn did not answer. Instead, he frowned and fell into a deep thought. Noah, on the other hand, noticed another scene. Chapter 2051. When the adventurers of Loki's clan were stunned by the environment in front of them, Noah suddenly stepped forward, came to the only road in the dense forest, and squatted down. Noah's action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Only then did the three leaders, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, discover it. On the forest road where Noah squatted down, there was some viscous purple-black liquid. "This is..." Riveria's eyes slowly narrowed. "The corrosive liquid of the larvae-type monster." "No, it's not corrosive liquid, it should be body fluid." Finn came to Noah's side and squatted down as well. After looking at the viscous liquid on the ground, he made such a judgment. It seems that those larvae-type monsters really came to this floor and went forward along the forest road, heading somewhere. If one looked carefully, they would be able to find it. On the only forest road that was opened up, there was a lot of viscous purple-black liquid. The purple-black liquid formed a long drag mark, spreading along the forest road. Therefore, Finn's speculation was 100% convincing. Regardless of the new type of monster, there seems to be no trace of other monsters anywhere here. Gareth carried the battle axe, looked around, and frowned. Could it be that the larvae-type monsters took the magic stones and killed them all? No one could answer this question. Everyone could only be silent one after another, looking at each other, completely not knowing how to react. The 59th floor of the underground city. Stepping into this floor, Loki's clan officially updated their arrival floor record. For this, everyone was ready to fight to the death. As a result, after stepping into this floor, not only did they not encounter a single monster, but even the environment was very different from the records left by Zeus's clan. As the saying goes, there must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Such a strange situation made everyone's heart unable to relax at all. Instead, it tightened. Finn closed his eyes. After a while, he cast his gaze on Noah. What do you think? What else can I think? It must be unusual, right? Noah's tone was rather relaxed. No matter what, if we continue to move forward, we will definitely be able to obtain an answer. This is my opinion. Therefore, there is no need to change our approach. Finn smiled and stood up. He pulled out the spear on his back and pointed it at the forest in front of him. Comrades, let's continue forward. Everyone nodded in agreement. And so, with Tiona and Tyan in the lead, the party advanced along the single path in a formation no different from before. The surroundings were eerily quiet. The silence did not match the dungeon at all, causing Leafia's hand to tremble as she held on to her magic wand. She was obviously extremely nervous. At the side, Noah constantly surveyed the surroundings, his brows tightly knitted together. Although nothing was happening at the moment, Noah, with his sharp senses, could still sense that the atmosphere in the air was a little strange. The more they moved forward, the more they felt as though they were stepping into a quagmire. The extremely sticky air made Noah's pitch-black eyes flicker slightly, and he couldn't help but quicken his pace. As he quickened his pace, everyone also unknowingly quickened their pace along with Noah and passed through the forest. Not long after, the monotonous trees and the surroundings began to disappear, and the field of vision in front of them widened. Noah and the rest walked out of the forest and stepped into a gray land. Looking at the vast wilderness in front of them, they were all speechless. Pitter-patter. Pitter-patter, amidst the sounds of viscous objects squeezing each other, countless yellow-green meatballs gathered together in the endless gray wilderness in front of them, covering the entire land. A dense group of larva-like monsters wriggled their bodies while surrounding a massive object, as though they were the subjects of a king. Their elastic but disgusting bodies wriggled up and down, making one shudder in fear. And the massive object that was surrounded by a large group of larva-like monsters was a creature that made one doubt their own eyes. It had beautiful and lustrous long hair draped over its back. It had slender arms, a graceful figure, and a goddess-like appearance. Its body was covered with a colorful coat, but its skin was as green as a plant. Although it had a beauty that could take one's breath away, it didn't have any life, just like a doll. Although the skin color was a little strange, there was no doubt that it was an extremely beautiful girl. However, such a beautiful girl, only the upper body belonged to the category of human, but the lower body was a real monster. It was a lower body made up of huge petals and countless tentacles. With a goddess-like upper body and a monster-like lower body, the massive object that was beautiful and ugly, sacred and evil stood in the middle of a group of larva-like monsters, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. Its body was wrapped in vines, and its eyes were tightly closed, looking very peaceful. However, during its sleep, the countless tentacles on the lower body of the behemoth kept wriggling, reaching out to the surrounding larva-like monsters. Whenever the tentacle reached in front of a larva-like monster, the larva-like monster would open its mouth. Then, the tentacle would directly drill into the larva-like monster's mouth, and after a while, it would pull out a magic stone. That was undoubtedly the magic stone of the larva-like monster. After losing the magic stone equivalent to life and soul, the larva-like monsters whose magic stones were taken away immediately turned into ashes and piled up on the ground. And those magic stones were stuffed by the tentacles into the petal-like lower body. There, a big mouth covered with mucus and fangs opened like a man-eating flower, constantly swallowing the magic stones that were stuffed over. The scene beyond everyone's imagination made everyone in Loki's clan fall into a state of shock, and they couldn't recover for a long time. I finally understand. Noah sighed. I understand why those larva-like monsters are like strengtheners, plundering the magic stones of other monsters, and why they collectively migrate to other floors. Unfortunately, I also understand. Finn took a deep breath and stared straight ahead. The larva-like monsters will plunder the magic stones of other monsters, not because they are all strengtheners, but because there are other existences controlling them, letting them go to other floors to plunder magic stones, and then return here to contribute the strengthened magic stones to the controller. This was the reason why the larva-like monsters would collectively plunder the magic stones of other monsters, and why the larva-like monsters would collectively migrate to other floors. In the final analysis, it was not because the larva-like monsters were all beyond common sense, but because there was an existence beyond common sense controlling them. That was the behemoth that was surrounded by the larva-like monsters. A female monster that was different from the larva-like monsters, but was controlling the larva-like monsters. Seeing the large group of larva-like monsters constantly contributing the strengthened magic stones to the female monster, everyone shuddered. That monster, has it been devouring the strengthened magic stones with this efficiency all the time? Tiona's lips were a little pale. Then how powerful did it get? Does it even need to be said? Tiona bit her lip, stared fiercely at the behemoth of the female monster, and said so. If there is a floor master on the 59th floor, then it's her. The cannon dragon on the 58th floor was as high as LV5. The female monster that occupied the 59th floor, according to the calculation method of the floor master, was 2 levels higher than the monsters on this floor. In other words, the female monster was at least LV7 floor master. It might even be higher than that. Just when everyone understood the meaning behind this, AIC stared blankly at the female monster. She suddenly shook her head as if she had lost her soul. No. No, AIC's strange behavior attracted everyone's attention. However, before the crowd could react, AIC abruptly spoke. Quick. Let's go. This sentence was greeted by the 2 sword spirits that only Noah could hear. No. It's too late. As soon as the voice fell, a shocking sense of horror suddenly descended. Chapter 2052. At this moment, everyone, including Noah, raised their heads abruptly and focused their gazes in front of them. Then, everyone saw it. In the vast wilderness covered in grayish-black ashes, the female monster that had been devouring the magic stones of the larvae abruptly stopped. Immediately after, the upper body of the female monster that was wrapped in vines suddenly trembled. Under the gaze of everyone present, she slowly raised her head and opened her eyes. What kind of eyes were they? There were no pupils. There was no iris. He did not have the slightest bit of vigor that an intelligent creature should have. That was the pair of eyes the female monster had when she opened her eyes. With such a pair of eyes, the beautiful face of the female monster suddenly burst into a smile. Ah! In the next second, cries that sounded like the cries of a baby rang out throughout the entire world. It was as if the cries had turned into invisible sound waves, shaking up everything in the surroundings. That voice had the beauty of a ballad, but it also had the ugliness of a howl. It was filled with a holy aura, but it also gave off a filthy feeling. It was very contradictory. And it was this incomparably contradictory cry that turned into the most ear-piercing shriek in the world, transmitted into the ears of everyone present. Ah! Tiona, Tiny, and Leafia immediately let out sorrowful cries. Ha! Finn, Riveria, Gareth, and Bert involuntarily covered their ears and squeezed out a groan from their throats. The ear-piercing screams were like invisible sharp weapons, constantly stabbing at the adventurers of Loki's clan, making everyone unable to help but show uncomfortable expressions. Only Noah and AIC stared at the shrieking female monster. Their expressions changed abruptly. AIC's expression changed abruptly because even though the shriek didn't make her feel uncomfortable, it made her blood flow faster and her heart beat faster. That reaction was as if it was resonating with the woman's voice. AIC could no longer maintain her usual calmness and fell into an uncontrollable state. As for Noah, the reason why his expression changed was because of Aster's words. Master. Aster's voice resounded in Noah's heart. Those are immortal essences. Immortal spirit. Was that an immortal spirit? Looking at the female monster who had the upper body of a goddess and the lower body of a monster, Noah was almost subconsciously speechless. She had the two elements of beauty and ugliness, holiness and evil. Could such a monster be an immortal? What kind of joke was this? Immortal spirits were the avatars of gods. In the era where the gods had yet to descend, the duty of the fairies was to listen to the voices of the gods in the heavenly realm, accept the will of the gods, find the heroes of the lower realm, assist and help them, and crusade against all the sins and evil in the world. To put it bluntly, the fairies were the predecessor of the grace bestowed by the gods to the people of the lower realm. In the era where the gods had yet to descend and the humans of the lower realm had yet to receive the grace of the gods, the fairies were the ones who bestowed the humans with power, magic, and even transformed into weapons, giving birth to the existence of heroes. That kind of existence was the thing in front of him that was neither human nor strange. I know you don't want to believe it, but it should be the truth. Athena seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and said, You said before that the fairies of this world and the elemental fairies of the elemental fairies have the same effect and can be categorized as the same existence. If the woman in front of us is really an immortal spirit, then it can explain why I and the Holy Sword fairies felt a familiar yet unfamiliar aura. But the fairy in front of us is no longer pure. Aster said with a very unique and emotionless voice. The monsters of this world can increase their power by devouring magic stones and become the so-called enhanced species. Then, it is very likely that in the past, a fairy was devoured by a monster and fell into depravity and madness, just like the magical fairies of the elemental fairies. The filthy fairy. That was the true identity of the woman in front of him. He didn't expect such a monster to appear in the buried city. Athena suddenly said, You're right. You're right. You're right. After a monster swallows a magic stone, it will become a strengthened species. In order to pursue greater power, it will continue to attack other monsters. Then, after swallowing a fairy essence and obtaining the power of the fairy essence, what will a monster become after swallowing a fairy essence? Noah understood the meaning of her words almost instantly. Just like how your two contracted fairies can sense each other's existence, the other party should also be able to sense the existence of your two contracted fairies, right? Drake explained Noah's situation. You're being watched, partner. With that, the female monster turned her head and stared at Noah. No. To be more precise, she was staring at Noah and AIC. Soon after, the female body cried out in joy as she let out a pleasant voice. Can't find you guys. All of a sudden, apart from Noah, everyone present felt as if their hearts were being squeezed tightly by an invisible hand. Their eyes suddenly widened. The sense of terror in the air suddenly reached its peak. Noah's eyes narrowed and he suddenly shouted, Disperse. Everyone present shuddered at the same time. Immediately after, apart from Leafia who did not have time to react and was hugged by Noah, the rest of the first-level adventurers all scattered at an alarming speed as though they were conditioned reflexes. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Almost at the same time, a series of sharp air-piercing sounds were heard in the sky. It was the sound of the filthy immortal fairy's tentacles turning into spears that pierced through the air and shot down like raindrops. The countless tentacles shrouded down like a torrential downpour and landed heavily on the spot where Noah and the others were a second ago. Bang 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 bang. A series of explosive sounds rang out. The tentacles that had turned into long spears that descended from the sky carried a terrifying power. They suddenly shattered the ground and pierced through the rock plates, setting off a violent gust of wind. Mixed with a large amount of sand, they shook in all directions. A terrifying shockwave swept out, causing the people who had scattered out of reflex to be affected. One by one, they were blown away, smashing heavily onto the ground. After rolling a few times, they flipped over and jumped up. Noah, who was protecting Leafia, was also affected by the violent shock wave. However, he relaxed his body and drifted away like a lone boat that met a huge wave. He only landed on the ground when the shock wave stopped expanding. As a result, apart from Noah and Leafia, the rest of the first-rank adventurers were reduced to such a sorry state in a single encounter. Haha, haha, haha haha. The female monster seemed to be amused by the sorry state of AIC and the others. Like an innocent little girl, she let out a bell-like laughter. With such laughter, the filthy immortal fairy glanced at Noah and then at AIC and shouted excitedly. Eat, you, them. Athena's words hit the bull's-eye. The filthy immortal fairy really intended to eat Aster and Athena. Perhaps the reason why the filthy immortal fairy suddenly woke up was because she sensed Aster and Athena, who were almost the same kind of immortal fairy. Noah had been targeted. And it wasn't just Noah. Even AIC had been targeted. The sense of terror that permeated the air increased once again. You. AIC looked at the filthy immortal fairy with eyes that had never wavered before. Why? Seeing AIC's abnormal behavior, Tiona, Leafia, and Bert didn't think much of it. However, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth seemed to know something and gritted their teeth. The female immortal fairy turned her gaze and stared at AIC, smiling happily. Here. Become one with me. After saying that, countless tentacles once again turned into a violent storm. Like a deadly poisonous net, they fell from the sky and enveloped the area. Chapter 2053. Bang! In the middle of the vast cave, in a gray wilderness, a terrifying shockwave violently shook the surroundings following the sound of an explosion. Like a typhoon, it blew through the forest, causing the trees to sway wildly. In the center of the shock wave, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan were dodging the thick tentacles falling from the sky in a sorry state. Every place they stood was smashed by the tentacles with terrifying power, shattering one piece after another. Suddenly, in the vast wilderness, the roar of the tentacles smashing the ground reverberated endlessly, like thunder falling on the ground, extremely shocking people's eyes. All the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan desperately dodged. It was not easy for them to stabilize their bodies. Relying on their LV5 and LV6 ability values, they barely dodged all the attacks. During this period, the gigantic female monster had been letting out cheerful and pleasant laughter. She didn't show any mercy when she attacked. Her thick tentacles seemed to have turned into cannonballs at this very moment, constantly bombarding the surroundings, stirring up waves of impact and sand. That expression was simply like a playful girl playing with water. Perhaps, for that filthy fairy, the battle in front of her was actually no different from playing around. Under such circumstances, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan found it more and more difficult to dodge. Everyone. Being held in Noah's arms, Leafia, who could smoothly avoid the bombardment of the storm without any effort, looked at her companions who were in danger and could not help but cry out anxiously. Noah held Leafia tightly in his arms, while dodging the whip shadows of the tentacles that attacked fiercely, while looking at the group of Loki's clan members who were finding it more and more difficult to dodge. His empty hand slowly clenched, and traces of magic fluctuations emerged on it. "What's wrong?" Drake spoke. "Are you going to make a move?" Hearing this, Noah hesitated for a moment. After a while, he actually dispersed the magic power gathered and whispered such a sentence. "Wait a little longer. They haven't reached their limits yet." "Is that so?" Drake said noncommittally. "You treat those people really well." "Not bad. Is it not bad to leave him in the lurch?" If it were another situation, he definitely wouldn't say that. However, if Noah did not make a move here, it was indeed not bad. In the dungeon, there was an unwritten rule. That is, you can't take the prey of others without permission. The monsters that adventurers dealt with were not only a source of wealth, but also factors that could make them stronger. After all, the adventurers who received the favor needed to kill monsters to gain experience points, which could be used to strengthen their ability points. The reason why Noah hadn't made a move all this time and took the initiative to kill the enemy was because killing monsters didn't benefit him at all. However, for the people of Loki's clan, it was a period of experience points that could make them stronger. Leaving all the monsters to AIC's group to deal with would allow them to reap the best rewards. If all of them were to be dealt with by Noah, it would be harming others without benefiting himself. It was precisely because he saw through Noah's thoughts that Finn told Noah before that if it was really necessary, then don't worry about them and just make a move. Now, in the face of the current world's peak monsters whose strength was enough to surpass LV-7, the adventurers of Loki's clan were already forced into a dead end. However, Noah still thought that it was not the time to make a move yet. When Finn and the others reached their limits, the experience points would be the most precious. Thinking of this, Noah still decided not to make a move and wait for a while. With this observation, before the adventurers of Loki's clan had time to erupt, the Immortal of Filth took the initiative to erupt. "Fire, come!" With such a light and pleasant voice, a huge magic circle suddenly unfolded in front of the Immortal of Filth. "WH. What?" Seeing this scene, everyone of Loki's clan was shocked. Impossible." Leafia also exclaimed in shock. What did they see? They saw that the monster was using magic. How? How is this possible? Riveria showed a rare look of shock. How can a brutal monster that follows its instincts cast a spell that requires a focused mind to control the reins of magic and chant the spell? Magic was the power of knowledge. This was a famous saying that the people of this world recognized. Whether it was the chanting of spells or the control of magic, it was inseparable from the support of knowledge. Therefore, mastering magic had always been a privilege of the people of the lower realm, and there had never been a monster that could use magic. However, the Immortal of Filth in front of them seemed to want to subvert everyone's understanding, and with a pleasant voice, it kept chanting. What's more, it was an extraordinary singing. Roar, roar, fire vortex, red lotus cliff, roar of karmic fire, borrow the power of the sudden strong wind, seal the world, burning sky, burning earth, burning ocean, burning spring, burning mountain, burning life, turn everything into scorched earth, fire the cannon of anger and sigh, pay the price with the life of my beloved hero. The Immortal of Filth's voice seemed to be singing, and it fluently chanted long paragraphs of incantation, causing everyone in Loki's clan to be shocked. There were two reasons for the shock. One was the incantation that the Immortal of Filth was chanting. That was obviously a chant for a super long text. Using such a long incantation to release magic, the power was definitely shocking. At least, although Riveria's magic also had a long chant, the scale was not as big as the Immortal of Filth's. In addition, the Immortal of Filth's chanting speed was shockingly fast. Even Riveria needed a long time to chant the incantation, but the filthy Immortal used less than 3 seconds to chant the large number of incantations. This made everyone realize something. Death was coming. Riveria. Finn's voice lost its calm for the first time. Open the barrier. No. Riveria also lost her composure and shouted loudly. It's too late. Hearing this, Tiona and Tiorn showed a frightened expression. In the name of the Executor, the name given to me is Flame Essence, Incarnation of Flames, Queen of Flames. In the next moment, the Immortal of Filth finished the last syllable of the incantation, and a terrifying magic power rose from her body. No. Leafia's pretty face turned pale. Damn it. Bert growled. This is too much of a joke. Garrett's lips trembled. Under such circumstances, the female monster abruptly smiled and softly chanted the true name of the super-long chant spell. Firestorm. Fiery red color dyed the entire world. Boom. Accompanied by a violent explosion, a terrifying flame burst out from the magic array in front of the Immortal of Filth. It turned into a red storm that swept out with shocking heat. The fiery red high-temperature storm almost became a tornado that reached the ceiling of the cave and shook in all directions like the explosion of a star. The gray earth was burned to ashes. The forest in the distance spontaneously combusted. Under the expansion of the red storm, an unimaginably high temperature rushed toward the level 1 adventurers of Loki's clan like a heatwave, and everyone stood rooted to the ground in a daze. Soon after, a violent firestorm swept over as if it was the end of the world. It's over, no one knew who murmured this. However, almost at the same time, a figure dashed out. Instead of retreating, she rushed toward the terrifying firestorm and reached out her hand. Clang! A dazzling white light suddenly bloomed. One hand held a sword, and the other hand shone with a dazzling white light. AIC suddenly charged out. Her crystal-clear eyes were filled with determination as she faced the terrifying storm of flames. In the next moment, the dazzling white light and the violent firestorm collided. Boom! An astonishing boom resounded, shattering the surrounding rock walls of the vast cavern. The white light and the firestorm collided in the center of the cave, illuminating the surroundings. Chapter 2054. Woo 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 woo. In front of the raging waves of flames, AIC raised her hand that was shining with a dazzling white light. She continuously refined her mental strength, causing the brilliant white light to become more and more dazzling. Gradually, it covered the surrounding fiery red color. AIC. Seeing that AIC was able to withstand the destructive firestorm alone, the Grade 1 adventurers of the Loki clan finally reacted. Noah was also looking at AIC. His eyes lit up when he saw the dazzling white light erupting from AIC's body and withstanding the violent waves of fire. That girl can already use crush to such an extent. Perhaps it was because of the eruption before a great catastrophe. All in all, the crushing magic that AIC had used up almost all of her mental strength to cast was so dazzling that it could light up the entire cavern that was bigger than Eulalia. The dazzling white light swallowed the storm of flames bit by bit. Finally, it completely enveloped the violent storm of flames. Whing! A trembling sound suddenly rang out. The fiery storm that was covered by the dazzling white light was divided equally by the white lines that suddenly appeared. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, the firestorm that was covered in white lines suddenly exploded, turning into a wave of fiery red wind. Mixed with sparks that filled the sky, it spread out. AIC, who had just managed to shatter the firestorm with great difficulty, was unable to dodge the incoming shockwave and was blown away. Miss AIC. Rafia was shocked. Tiana and Tyne charged forward, leaping into the air and catching AIC, who was flying backwards like a cannonball, in their arms. However, the force that sent AIC flying was very powerful. Even though the Amazon sisters were LV5, they were still pushed back fiercely in the instant they caught AIC in their arms. They only stopped after sliding back for more than 10 meters. Ugh! Both Tiona and Tiona let loose a muffled groan as their slender arms became slightly numb. Cough cough. AIC directly knelt on the ground and coughed a few times. Her beautiful face had almost lost all color. It wasn't all caused by the injury. It was also due to the large consumption of mental strength. However, in the end, AIC relied on herself to block the terrifying firestorm and saved everyone's lives. The Immortal of Filth seemed to be very dissatisfied with the result and let out a tantrum cry. Seeing this scene, Finn, Gareth, and Bert rushed to the front of AIC, Tiona, and protected the three girls behind them. And pointed their weapons at the female monster with vigilance. AIC, Riveria went to AIC's side and squatted down and supported her. Are you okay? AIC said weakly. Her eyes were filled with unconcealable exhaustion. I'm fine, I can't tell at all, Riveria said bluntly. I'll reply to you first. The elixirs are here. Leafia hurriedly carried a large backpack and ran to AIC's side. She hurriedly rummaged through the high-grade elixirs and high-grade magic elixirs and stuffed them all to AIC. Miss AIC, hurry up and heal. AIC heard Leafia's words and knew that now wasn't the time to be stubborn. She accepted the 2 bottles of elixirs and began to heal. However, it was obvious that the enemy wasn't even willing to give AIC time to heal. "Oh Earth," a roar, the melodious voice that sounded like a ballad rang out once more. The adventurers of Loki's clan widened their eyes in shock. Shortly after, a pitch-black magical formation unfolded beneath the Immortal of Filth and released pitch-black mana. Undoubtedly, the Immortal of Filth had just used a powerful spell a second ago. Logically speaking, even if she still had some mental strength left, there should be a slight cooldown time after casting such a powerful spell. However, the Immortal of Filth overturned common sense once more. She didn't need the cooldown time after casting the spell and began to chant once more, causing a surge of mana to rise. Old hag. Bert couldn't help but curse because he was too shaken. Stop daydreaming. Hurry up and activate the barrier. In fact, before Bert even spoke, Riveria had already begun to move. Dance, Fairy of the Air, Master of the Light, I have made a pact with the guardian god of the forest. I hope you will play the song of the earth to envelop us and protect us. I implore you to turn into a giant wall of light to protect us. As if to make up for her previous loss of composure, Riveria quickly constructed an incantation. She closed her eyes and raised her wand, causing the magical formation to revolve beneath her. However, the enemy also displayed the same extraordinary chant that she had just performed. Come, 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 shell of earth, artifact of black steel, hammer of shining stars. With the contract of creation, I command you to reverse, burn the sky, shatter the ground, build a bridge, combine into one. Descend the axe of the sky, the calamity of destruction. This time, the Immortal of Filth's chant was clearly much shorter than before. It had changed from an extremely long chant to a long chant. This meant that although the next attack wasn't as powerful as the previous one, it was much faster than before. In the name of the Executor, I command the name Goblin, embodiment of Earth, Queen of Earth. The Immortal of Filth's incantation speed was astonishing, easily surpassing Riveria, who was also chanting a long chant. In the end, the Immortal of Filth still managed to cast her spell before Riveria did. Meteor shower. The light that blossomed from the pitch-black magical formation beneath the Immortal of Filth suddenly converged into a beam and soared into the sky, disappearing into the ceiling. Instantly, the ceiling of the huge cavern turned into a pitch-black night sky. Then, a meteor shower enveloped in black light appeared. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Sharp piercing sounds rang out, causing meteors to fall from the sky, turning into pitch-black streams of light that enveloped the area below like raindrops. In the nick of time, Riveria promptly released her own defensive magic. Dimension Interception. A transparent light screen rose in front of everyone, protecting everyone behind the barrier. Then, the meteors directly fell on the transparent light screen. Bang 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 bang. Explosions rang out one after another. The heavy meteor shower bombarded the transparent light curtain and exploded, setting off waves of astonishing flames and shockwaves. The scene that seemed to be constantly bombarded by artillery fire made everyone behind the transparent light screen break out in cold sweat. On the other hand, Riveria gritted her teeth. Just like AIC, she continuously refined her mental strength into mana and infused it into her defensive magic, holding on bitterly. So far, Riveria's defensive spell had saved her companions in the clan countless times. That defensive spell called Dimension Interception was famous for its sturdiness and had never been breached. Unfortunately, today, Riveria's fortress was destined to be breached once. Crack, an incomparably subtle but exceptionally ear-piercing cracking sound came from the transparent light screen. At this moment, everyone's complexion changed. Just when everyone couldn't help but despair, a heavy voice abruptly interrupted. Boost! The moment that heavy voice sounded, an incomparably malevolent gauntlet was placed on Riveria's shoulder. Transfer. On the back of the gauntlet, a sparkling and translucent jade flashed with light. At the same time, Riveria felt a powerful force suddenly flowing into her body, fiercely increasing her strength by a large margin. Clang! The transparent light screen standing in front of everyone suddenly blossomed with dazzling light and became a lot thicker. Bang 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 bang. The meteor shower bombarded the light screen from the sky, setting off terrifying flames and shockwaves, but it was unable to shake the light screen. This situation made everyone's spirits rise as they looked at Riveria's side. Chapter 2055. At some unknown time, Noah had silently appeared beside Riveria. His gaze was still fixed on that huge female monster, but his hand was on Riveria's body. However, in that hand, a sinister, dragon-claw-like scarlet-red hand covered everything. It tightly gripped Riveria's shoulder, and the jade on the back of the hand blossomed with radiance. That's... Ace, Tiona, Tiny, and Leafia recognized the gauntlet almost immediately. That's... Although Finn, Riveria, and Gareth had never seen a gauntlet before, they were still able to determine what it was based on the current situation. What's that? Bert was the only one who didn't know what was going on, but he understood one thing. That was, with Noah's help, the defensive power of Riveria's barrier greatly increased, blocking the powerful magic of the filthy immortal fairy. Is that why Finn values him so much? The way Bert looked at Noah had already changed. However, the immortal of filth was dissatisfied. Seeing that her magic was blocked once again, the filthy immortal's beautiful face finally twisted. She let out a sharp shriek and released an extremely strong negative emotion. As the immortal of filth shrieked, countless black shadows began to appear behind it. It was a piece of yellow-green meat covered with mottled patterns. Countless larvae responded to the filthy immortal fairy's call one after another, squirming their bodies of different sizes as they surged forward. The scene of the dense yellow-green meat swarming over made all of the Loki clan members bite their lips. Even Finn was considering whether he should retreat here, return to the camp, and end this expedition. In the end, Noah was the only one who raised his arm that was covered by a ferocious crimson gauntlet. He stared straight at the larva-type army that was surging forward and spoke indifferently. Let's go. It was a very short sentence, but it made everyone stunned. If you don't have enough power, then I'll lend it to you. Noah stared closely at the immortal of filth and said so. You just have to be bold and go. Leave that immortal of filth to me. After saying that, Noah extended the gauntlet that had been accumulating and multiplying in number to the front. Transfer. The heavy but exceptionally clear voice made the crimson gauntlet blossom with a brilliant light that enveloped everyone around it. Under the shroud of that light, everyone felt it very clearly. An extremely powerful force ran through their bodies and flowed throughout their bodies. The powerful force brought an instant feeling of omnipotence, making every adventurer of the Loki clan close their eyes and feel the power flowing in their bodies. When they opened their eyes again, all of them were burning with fighting spirit. There was no need for words. No need for extra motivation. The powerful force flowing in their bodies made every adventurer of Loki's clan feel hot all over, and their fighting spirit instantly rose to the peak. Go! Following Finn's order, except for Riveria and Leafia, the rest of the adventurers stomped on the ground and rushed out. Ooh, 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 ooh. Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona all roared and bravely charged into the group of monsters. A's body was surrounded by a whirlwind-like whirlwind. Her pair of crystal-clear eyes flickered with a frightening expression as she also charged into the group of monsters. On one side was an endless army of larvae. On the other side was an adventurer group whose power had skyrocketed. The two sides met after a second and launched a fierce confrontation. The spear in Finn's hand at this moment turned into a windmill that swept away thousands of troops. The battle axe in Gareth's hand turned into a heavy hammer that thundered like thunder. The pair of silver boots on Bert's feet turned into flashes of lightning at this moment. The dual blades and battle axes in Tiona's hands also turned into raging waves of wind and rain at this moment. The group of level 1 adventurers charged into the army of larvae. The tips of their spears, axes, boots, and swords repeatedly fell on the bodies of the larvae and beheaded them on the spot. Poochie 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 poochie. The sound of silk being torn apart constantly echoed, causing the larvae to fall one after another. Bang 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 bang. The larvae that fell immediately exploded one after another, causing purplish-black corrosive liquid to spray in all directions. Finn's group, whose power had skyrocketed, completely ignored the corrosive liquid splashing towards them. They charged into the group of monsters at an astonishing speed. Even if the corrosive liquid touched their bodies, it would immediately be blocked by a layer of faint green or white light. It couldn't touch Finn's group at all. The green and white light were naturally the magic of Riveria and Leafia. Echo, pass on the wishes, robes of the forest, holy grail of exorcism, transform into a shield. The two elven archmages raised their wands high up as magic circles revolved beneath their feet. Their bodies rippled with refined mana as they chanted pleasant incantations with light voices while buffing Finn's group with defensive spells one after another, protecting their companions as they charged into the horde of monsters. Under such circumstances, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona's group charged even more fearlessly. The weapons in their hands danced like bolts of lightning as they beheaded one monster after another. As for A's, who was surrounded by whirlwinds, she didn't even need to cast defensive spells. She relied on the invisible winds that wrapped around her body to deflect the corrosive liquid from the larvae's self-destruction. The thin sword in her hand turned into streaks of silver light that slashed in all directions. For a time, the endless army of monsters couldn't even touch the people of Loki's clan. They were killed several times by AIC's group, and their numbers decreased sharply. At this moment, A's, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tyogni had all become meat grinders, shredding all the monsters in their path. In less than 30 seconds, they had killed 1/10 of the larvae army. Ah! The female monster let out a furious shriek. As if she couldn't bear to watch any longer, a terrifying amount of magic power surged from her body. Fire, come! That was the beginning of a long chant spell called Firestorm. Roar, roar, roar. Fire vortex, red lotus cliff, karmic roar, borrowing the power of the sudden strong wind to seal the world, the burning sky, the burning earth, the burning ocean, the burning springs, the burning mountains, the burning life, turning everything into scorched earth, setting off the horn of anger and sigh, paying the price with the life of my beloved hero. She began to chant again, and the mana that rose from the female monster became more and more terrifying. A huge red magic circle flashed in front of her, and like the muzzle of a cannon, it was aimed at the Rockies who were charging in the midst of the monsters. It was a pity that no matter how fast the Fairy of Filth's chant was, it still needed time. Even if the Fairy of Filth could shorten the long chant that would take most sorcerers a long time to chant, it still couldn't compare to an instantaneous spell. Thus, as the Fairy of Filth spat out a ballad-like chant, a strange phenomenon occurred. Whoosh! A thick beam of magic power suddenly shot into the sky, streaking across space and landing heavily on the magic circle in front of the female monster. Bang! There was a flash and an explosion at the same time. The magic circle in front of the Fairy of Filth was cleanly shattered by the beam of magic power, turning into pieces of broken glass like a mirror. The Fairy of Filth's chant came to an abrupt end. She widened her eyes and looked in the direction of the beam of magic power. There, Noah raised a hand, his dark, deep eyes meeting the Fairy of Filth's shocked gaze. Magic power that was far more powerful than the Fairy of Filth surged from his body. Chapter 2056. Whing. The atmosphere began to tremble. The terrifying mana fluctuations turned into surging gales that continuously swirled within the huge cavern. With such a shocking amount of mana fluctuating all over his body, Noah slowly lowered his hands, and his body began to distort slightly. Sensing the terrifying movement, whether it was Ace, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona who were charging in the group of monsters, or Riveria and Leafia who were chanting incantations, they all stopped what they were doing and looked over. Thus, everyone present clearly saw it. The appearance of the young man who was fluctuating with terrifying mana fluctuations began to change. That extremely ordinary face that did not have the slightest bit of outstanding features faded bit by bit. It was replaced by another face. It was a face that everyone in Eulalia was extremely familiar with. Bert's eyes suddenly widened to the limit when he saw that face, not to mention those who knew about it for the time being. At this moment, Noah finally returned to his original appearance. In order to change his appearance, not only did Noah constantly provide mana to support the transformation, but he also tried his best to suppress the circulation of mana in his body in order to eliminate his own aura and presence, so as to not expose his overly powerful aura. In this way, it was equivalent to letting Noah suppress most of his power. Now that Noah had slightly used his true form, the mana in his body could no longer be suppressed. It rapidly surged like a raging wave, causing Noah's aura and presence to skyrocket. He did not even maintain his transformation and returned to his original appearance. Under everyone's gaze, Noah met the Immortal of Filth's still astonished gaze and narrowed his eyes. I don't know who you are, nor do I know why you were devoured by monsters and turned into this filthy appearance. But I know that if you still have your rationality before you were devoured, you must be in great pain to see yourself like this, right? Noah said softly. So, you can be free here. With that, the mana fluctuations that surged from Noah's body gradually began to transform into phosphorescent energy. The phosphorescent energy was like a flame that burned on Noah's body bit by bit until it became extremely violent and reached the ceiling of the cavern. That incomparably violent power caused everyone in Loki's clan to fall into shock. Then, everyone present realized what was going on. Noah was ready to crusade against the filthy immortal. He was going to crusade against a female monster that could even surpass Eulalia's most powerful LV7 magic power. Mr. Noah. Leafia could not help but speak up. Please wait. Don't. Noah did not turn his head, his voice was strong and powerful as he looked at the immortal. My opponent is just a fallen immortal. My Aster will never lose. Aster? Leafia was startled. Aster? Finn and the rest were stunned as well. Aster? I muttered the name softly. Aster. The Immortal of Filth also tilted his head and repeated the name of the strongest sword spirit like a parrot. Under such circumstances, Noah smiled indifferently. Open your eyes wide and see clearly. Noah raised one hand and said. What is a true immortal? On the back of Noah's hand, the crisscrossing sword imprint formed by the sword spirit suddenly lit up, bursting with a burst of dazzling light particles that suddenly appeared in the air and slowly floated out. The moment the light particles appeared, the immortal of Filth's eyes widened once again. AIC, on the other hand, felt her heart beating faster than ever before. The blood in her body began to heat up, causing her starry eyes to ripple. Then, the light particles began to gather and gradually condensed into a human figure. A silvery white waist-length hair hung down softly. Her white skin was as smooth as a pearl. The hem of her dress swayed gently in the wind. A pair of mysterious eyes gradually opened, shining like gems. The petite elven girl appeared in the dazzling light and landed on the ground. That's Finn, Riveria, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, Tyogni, and Rafia were all stunned. AIC's eyes couldn't help but waver. She looked straight at the petite elf girl and squeezed out two words with difficulty. Immortal essence, beautiful. Holy. Pure. Stainless. These words seemed to have been prepared for the girl who appeared in the light, and all of them gathered in that petite body. That's right. This was a true immortal. The immortal of Filth looked at Aster in a trance, and his entire body began to tremble. The filthy immortal fairy's joyful cry echoed in the air like a roar. The female monster, who was in pursuit of great power and craved to devour immortal essence, instinctively felt that it was the most delicious food. Therefore, the filthy immortal spirit cried tears of joy. Aster! Aster! The filthy immortal fairy, on the other hand, repeated the name she had just learned in an innocent and happy voice. Eat you. Become one with me. Aster. Like a young girl chasing after her beloved, the filthy immortal spirit cast a burning gaze at Aster. Then, the filthy immortal spirit moved. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Tentacles turned into spears that covered the sky and suddenly fell from the sky. They mercilessly fell in the direction of Noah and Aster. Be careful. Everyone cried out in alarm. However, Noah only looked at the rain of spears, and his voice didn't waver in the slightest. Cold Queen of Steel, holy sword that slays demons and demons, turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power. No one could understand the incantation that was written in the Elvish language. But it didn't matter. Because it was fine as long as Aster could understand it. Only Noah was allowed to chant the incantation to prove that he had formed a contract with the strongest sword spirit. I will not become one with you. Aster said expressionlessly. I only belong to my master. Aster's body flashed with a dazzling light, and turned into light particles that gathered in Noah's hand. As if catching a ray of light, Noah raised the shining sword in his hand and pointed it forward. Demon Slayer. The sword was silver in color, and the real name of the strongest sword spirit in the elemental world was engraved on the sword. It was a shining silver steel sword. Under the continuous infusion of divine power, the steel sword flashed with light. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The rain of spears fell from the sky like a torrential rain. Bang! Noah stomped on the ground and created a shockwave. Like riding the wind and breaking the waves, he advanced instead of retreating. He rushed toward the rain of spears that covered the sky. The distance between the two sides was closed in the blink of an eye. Clank! In the next moment, an unprecedentedly bright light illuminated the area. Ultimate Sword Technique. Formbreaker Ardent Flower Spiral Sword Dance Quadruple Slash. Noah released the ultimate sword technique that was used specifically against large-sized spirits and was powerful enough to annihilate demon god-level spirits. Poochie. 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 The quadruple slash turned into 4 streaks of sword light that pierced through the sky. Amidst crisp tearing sounds, the sword light cut off the tentacles and the petals on the monster's ugly lower body. Then, the sword light cut through the filthy immortal spirit's goddess-like upper body like a hot knife through butter. The huge female monster was cut into countless pieces by the 4 streaks of sword light, and thick green blood splattered out of its body. Ah! It was no longer a terrifying shriek, but the monster's scream before its death. The filthy immortal spirit was cut into countless pieces amidst its screams, and its body flashed with light. Bang! Following a sudden explosion, countless chunks of flesh exploded, turning into bursts of ashes that scattered across the ground. A huge magic stone fell on the ground, emitting light. Chapter 2057. There was a sudden silence. The army of larvae suddenly stopped moving. They froze on the spot as if they were in a daze and did not move anymore. In the midst of the group of monsters that had completely stopped moving, the people of Loki's clan looked at Noah, who had his back facing the huge magic stone that had fallen to the ground, and slowly lowered the shining silver steel sword in his hand. All of them fell into a daze. Including Ace. Her somewhat transparent eyes gazed at the man standing in front of the gigantic magic stone as she muttered. One hit, the filthy fairy, who had super-standard magical power, may be stronger than the strongest LV-7 auto in the Labyrinth City, but in the hands of Noah, it couldn't even make a move. This fact not only made Ace fall into chaos, but also made Finn and the others clench their fists. Is that his real strength? No. Definitely not. Because, in the war game with Apollo's clan, Noah once used a terrible magic that could destroy an entire city in one hit. That magic may be more powerful than the super long chant magic used by the filthy fairy. And in this battle, Noah didn't use that kind of magic at all. This proved that Noah's real strength was more than that. Understanding this, everyone was even more shocked. Bert's handsome face began to distort. Why is that bastard here? In the shock of everyone, the larvae monsters that were frozen in place suddenly moved. The death of their commander made this large group of larvae monsters begin to riot. They actually ignored the existence of the adventurers of Loki's clan and hurriedly fled. The sudden chaos on the battlefield finally caused Finn and the others to react. For the first time, Finn showed a somewhat fierce look. You want to escape after finding trouble? It's not that easy. The rest of the people also changed their expressions. Immediately afterward, the people of Loki's clan began to massacre. Seeing the people of Loki's clan rushing to kill the monsters as if they wanted to vent the previous depression and shock in their hearts, Noah shook his head with a smile. Immediately, he turned his head and looked at the huge magic stone behind him. The size of the magic stone was many times larger than the 17th floor's Goliath. It was like a small mountain. In addition, it was an unknown species of monster that was born after swallowing the fairy. If such a magic stone was sold on the ground, it could be sold for at least hundreds of millions of Varys. However, this huge magic stone was different from the other magic stones. Although magic stones were divided by quality and size, they were generally the same purple color. Even if some of them were deeper, they would still be purplish-blue. However, although the huge magic stone in front of him was also purplish-blue, the center part showed a kind of incomparably gorgeous color, as if there were all kinds of colors. It looked somewhat beautiful, but it gave people a very strange feeling, and even a very evil feeling. From this point of view, the filthy fairy was decisively different from the other monsters. Is it because it swallowed too many magic stones that its magic stone changed? Or is it because it swallowed the fairy? Noah pondered. It seems that, with the addition of special characteristics, the price of this magic stone is estimated to be an astronomical figure. The power that Noah transferred to the people of Loki's clan could not be maintained forever. In the end, it would fade with the passage of time and eventually disappear completely. Therefore, after bravely charging for a while, the doubled power in the bodies of Loki's clan had disappeared. However, the number of larvae monsters had also decreased sharply. Moreover, because the female monster was killed, all of them fell into chaos. They did not fight back at all and only fled randomly. In this way, Finn and the others naturally would not let this opportunity go. They constantly chased after the larvae monsters that were blindly fleeing. This hunt lasted for more than half an hour. When the last larvae monster fell and exploded, spraying a large amount of corrosive liquid, the group finally returned to the wilderness where the female monster was. They were all panting miserably. However, even though he was panting, Bert still rushed all the way back and directly rushed in the direction of Noah, cursing as he ran. "You bastard!" Seeing Bert's fierce look, Tiona and Tioni were shocked and hurriedly rushed up to hold Bert down. "What are you doing?" Bert struggled with all his might. "Let go of me." A Grade 1 adventurer's desperate struggle was simply like a raging bull, easily flinging any adult into the air. Unfortunately, Tiona and Tioni were also first-level adventurers, and their levels were not lower than Bert's. Moreover, in terms of strength alone, the Amazon sisters were even higher than Bert. Therefore, Tiona and Tioni easily suppressed Bert. Under Bert's struggle, they sighed one after another. "So it really turned out like this. That's why I didn't want to tell this werewolf his true identity. You knew from the start." Bert struggled even more desperately. "You bastards! You actually invited this guy into your clan behind my back. I'll bite you to death." Seeing Bert's desperate look, Noah was really speechless. "I said, I don't have any deep grudges with you. At most, we're not on good terms. Do you have to be like this?" "Ha! No deep grudges." Bert's face twitched as he yelled at Noah. "Go to hell. No deep grudges. I can't wait to swallow you whole. How dare you say we don't have any deep grudges?" Bert began to struggle even more desperately, and it took a lot of effort for both Tiona and Tiona to just barely restrain the berserk werewolf. "Wah! When did Bert's arms become strong enough to break free from us?" "Tiona, is this the power of jealousy? It's so ugly." "Tioni, shut up. Stupid Amazon." Bert was going crazy. "Let go of me." The three first-level adventurers were entangled with each other as if they were fighting bulls. Even Leafia, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but laugh dryly. As for Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, they were also speechless. What a scary obsession. Riveria, speaking of which, it's our fault for not noticing the true identity of our love rival, right? Gareth, after all, although we tried to hide it, we still accidentally mentioned the name Noah a few times in the strategy guide. The three leaders talked helplessly as they consumed the panacea that Leafia gave them to recover their strength and injuries. As for AIC, she kept staring at the silver holy sword in Noah's hand in silence. Clang! At this moment, the silver holy sword in Noah's hand blossomed with a bright light, gradually dissipating into light particles and condensing into a human figure. All of a sudden, everyone's attention was attracted by Aster. However, before anyone could react, Aster met AIC's gaze. His purplish eyes flickered a few times before he suddenly opened his mouth. "Sure enough, you're also a fairy." It was a simple sentence, but everyone was stunned on the spot. This was especially true for AIC. Her crystal-clear eyes started to tremble violently, and her usually emotionless face started to show obvious emotions. In the end, Noah became the first person to be surprised. "What?" Noah looked at AIC in astonishment. "You're a fairy." Not only Noah, but even Tioni, Leafia, and Bert looked at AIC in astonishment. Only Finn, Riveria, and Gareth looked at each other and fell into silence. The scene once again fell into silence. However, the silence this time was different from before. There was no oppressive feeling, but a faint sense of heaviness. Under everyone's gaze, AIC bit her lips and lowered her head, as if she didn't dare to look at everyone, and squeezed out this sentence. I'm not a fairy. After leaving this sentence, AIC turned around as if she didn't want to say anything else. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth opened their mouths, but didn't know what to say. Tioni, Leafia, and Bert looked at each other in confusion. Seeing this, Noah frowned. It seemed that AIC's background wasn't simple.